He's going to bring it up.
Huh?
I was going to say something to you earlier.
Uh, They'll come back to you. Just text it to me.
No.
Hey. How you doing? Got that? The you. Hey, man. How you doing? I'm coming down.
I would think with all of your cloud, you could get some heat in here.
Feels great, buddy.
Oh,
Really? I love it. Well, you know what happens is they run the air up until probably 7 o'clock, and then it shuts off.
Yeah.
And then it's going to get hot in here.
that's what Judge Sharp used to do to force settlements in the summertime. He'd send them back into the jury room, send the attorneys back in the jury room about 4:30,
Turn the
knowing that the federal court shuts down its air conditioning at 5.
yeah.
And you'd settle everything by 6:30.
you just,
No windows, nothing.
You're just dying. Well, that would do it.
It worked.
Oh, no, that one, it was horrible. It was so cold. It was so
Great.
cold. It's chilly, but not like last month. Oh. So,
Fun times. Run. I fixed the clock. I did a counting job today. Yep.
did you go change
6
that?
months. Yeah, I did. It was like 7:45.
Friday, how we got out of committee, I had to double check.
Yeah, I know.
What am I doing with all this spare time?
John,
This is gonna be on the recording.
okay.
I can't believe you would think of something like that. Tim.
Is Ryan Glenn our security
Yeah,
tonight?
Ryan's-
That's not good. Kevin, you wanna stay there or you wanna move? Up to you.
What do you think? There's like 3 things, right? Stay there.
Sit and stay.
Just because Dr. Vernon doesn't want me by him? No, I'm kidding. I'll stay here. That's fine.
See, he doesn't want you by him. Almost. I did my best.
I'm glad to change that.
I do, thank you very much. You're kind of good. That's all Raphael did for grants.
Yeah, I know. If you everything for grants, it makes $6.8 million. That's crazy. And when I had transfers then to that
That's
time,
one
like,
thing that.
sis said we didn't pay enough.
We would never have that problem, you know?
Yeah.
We would never have that problem.
That's because.
How you doing, Bob?
That's what somebody else
Good.
said. That's what somebody else said.
Wondering if Bianca's gonna be able to keep me out of trouble.
She'll be able to
We're not paying enough. Well, we pay
Yeah,
everything.
chemo's great.
She will definitely be missed, that's for sure.
We are upgrading these to have up here.
She helped us today in the office.
Pardon?
She was there in the office today
So is
helping
there
us.
anything you want us to do?
She was there probably 4 hours today. She was there for a long
Let me
time.
know.
So
Oh,
Give
nice.
information out to people.
I'm gonna send all her information when she gets her
Happening.
card and all that stuff, send it out to the council and individually reach out to her. We sent flowers to her new office today, this morning.
Oh, Bob, or Cream,
Yes,
do you have the memo from
yeah,
Bob?
uh-huh.
Can we have a copy of that now?
What I do? Oh,
You want it?
gotcha.
And then,
Do you have that?
Especially when
You got more than one?
yeah, we have more than one.
Oh, all right.
Copies for the council, right?
I ordered some old stock.
Did I take your only one, Bob?
Well, I.
Good deal.
Thank you. Bob, did I take your copy?
I got one from there.
Restarting. That's my wife.
This newspaper. Just show up. Well, I like the selection. One is yours. I mean, I don't. I was hoping that the quality. Oh, I need 3.
The quality stuff too. Most of these online places, if you get something you don't like, you can send it back. They usually take it back.
I know, right? Death trap.
Go on overtime. Go on overtime.
I think we also put copies
It's always on overtime.
out there.
They were, I took the last one.
Oh, you took the last one from out there? Oh, they must have just gotten up and taken them.
I know.
Get snuck in there or something. I mean, obviously not. So. I always worry about that.
Good evening. The Monday, November 13th, 2017 Common Council meeting is now in session. Would you please rise? Our invocation is by Rabbi Karen Kampanitz of Temple Bethel. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ben. As we gather together here this evening to conduct the business of the great city of South Bend, let us rededicate ourselves to work together in unity and harmony to improve this particular region of Indiana that we all call home, with the individual gifts that each of us brings to this worthy endeavor. Let us pledge to join hands to ensure that the city of South Bend is able to realize the abundant potential with which it is blessed. Where there are ignorance and superstition, let there be enlightenment and knowledge. Where there are prejudice and hatred, let there be acceptance and love. Where there are fear and suspicion, let there be confidence and trust. Where there are tyranny and oppression, let there be freedom and justice. Where there are poverty and disease, let there be prosperity and health. Where there are strife and discord, let there be harmony and peace. Aware of the great gift of life which is granted to each of us, let us use it for blessing as we seek to ensure that all God's creatures are treated with respect and dignity. Together, let us work to improve this part of planet Earth that has been granted to us to protect, to develop, and to nurture. In Judaism, we say the following words when we are in need of strength to carry out our holy tasks. I think it is appropriate to invoke these words here at this time, in this place. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Let's be strong and even stronger, and together let us strengthen one another. May God grant strength to all of us. May God bless us all with peace. And if you'd like to join with me, let us say together, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. If you would, please turn your cell phones to silent. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Preston?
Here.
Councilmember Kelly?
Here.
Councilmember Broden?
Here.
Councilmember Varner?
Present.
Vice President Davis?
Present.
Councilmember Vorty, excused. Councilmember Furlick?
Here.
Councilmember White?
Present.
President Scott?
Present.
8 present.
Thank you. Report on subcommittee minutes, please.
To the Common Council of the City of South Bend, the subcommittee has inspected the minutes of the October 23rd, 2017 meeting of the council and found them to be correct. Therefore, we recommend the same be approved.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Have no special business at this time. I would like to make one announcement that Bill 7817 and 7917 regarding tax abatement have been continued indefinitely. So if you're here for those, they will not be heard tonight. Report from city offices. Tonight we have our mayor. Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for the opportunity to join you. I promised to be pretty brief, but wanted to offer an update on a few things. First of all, let me just reiterate my appreciation to the council for a very good budget process. Inevitably, it was a compromise. I think it will serve residents well. And I wanted to let you know that we're developing a full framework for some of the newer policies. Now that we know that they're funded, we know they're going to need to be programmed in great detail, including the funding for a rental inspection program, lead exposure mitigation, support for early childhood, help with addiction issues, inclusive economic development, and a number of other programs that are, of course, existing and articulated that we need to carry forward with the resources that the council has approved. The MySB Parks and Trails budget was also approved, and now we are fully underway. As you may have noticed, if you pass by Charles Black Center or Howard Park or any of the other sites that are getting some improvements. So we're very excited for the opportunity in the coming months and years to unveil a lot of major developments across our parks. You're probably getting some communications as I am about leaf pickup. I just want to let you know help is on the way, so we are working now on a third pass. A lot of folks are wondering, did I miss my shot? You know, the 2 passes have come through my neighborhood, but the leaves aren't even down yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue working as much as weather will permit. We hope to announce very soon a plan for a third pattern of sweeps, and if there's still a need even after that, we'll do as much as we can before it becomes prohibited because of weather. So please stay tuned on that front. I also want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about the issue of homelessness. I think it's something that's on everybody's minds. I know some people have joined today to speak about this too. In our office, we've been hearing from people who represent a spectrum of opinion. And there are some who are demanding to know why people are permitted to remain in the public right-of-way at all. There are other people who believe it is cruel to disrupt the lives of people in that public right-of-way at all. So what we're trying to do as an administration is find an approach that balances law, compassion, and most importantly, safety for everybody who's involved. As you know, for the better part of a year, we've had a working group on homeless issues which represented a very diverse range of opinion and backgrounds, and it's been gathering to discuss solutions and present them to the administration. We received those recommendations in August. For those who are interested, the full report of that working group is available online, including a lot of research that went into the recommendations. And those recommendations are the framework, as far as my administration is concerned, for our policies going forward. We know that the best solutions have to do with shelter and services, and so that's where the bulk of our attention is going. It's become clear from our experience as a community that an enforcement-only approach doesn't work. But it's also clear that abandoning enforcement is a mistake. There is a balance to be struck among all of the different approaches, and that's what we're seeking to do as an administration. The good news is our community is blessed with a number of first-rate services. They have an excellent track record in supporting those in need, and most importantly of all, a good track record in moving people out of homelessness. But we estimate approximately 125 unsheltered homeless people living in St. Joseph County, and the bulk of those are in South Bend. Many of them are unable or unwilling to use the services that are available here, sometimes because of mental health challenges that they're facing or substance abuse issues. These are, by definition, some of those most in need of services and those most difficult to serve in our community. We don't have any hard data that shows any evidence that the number of unsheltered homeless in our community has increased, but certainly the visibility of the issue has increased, due partly to an encampment that is formed immediately south of the downtown area. Our approach, as laid out in the working group report, is guided by a housing first mentality. This has emerged as a best practice for cities dealing with these issues. In order to do housing first properly, you need 2 elements, and we're acting to do both. One is you have a need for permanent supported housing. So the working group estimates about 80 additional units are needed. Beginning with the Fuse project, which is opening very shortly on the site of the former Oliver School, we expect to have the first 32 of these needed units becoming available. The second thing that's needed is an intake center, and that's why the city has committed $1.5 million to help establish a center like that, which we hope will be in action by this time next year, and that we envision as an entry point to the system of care as well as a location for some of the housing first services that are needed. I believe right now the city is putting the most concentrated effort and investment on this issue that we have seen since the establishment of the Center for the Homeless. And we believe that's positioning us to make leaps forward on how we address the issue. But we can't wait until next year. And that's why the city is again supporting Project Warm, which will become available in December, as well as partnering with Life Treatment Centers and the Center for the Homeless, who are already operating weather amnesty programs. And we still have the issue of the encampment. The city's policy is that no one should be spending the night at this location. And in particular, it's not safe and it's not lawful to have beds, tents, pallets, anything else that is permanent in the public right-of-way. And the city has a responsibility to look after safety requirements in that right of way. The main concern, though, is that encampments are not good for the people who are in them. There is a lot of evidence that encampments lead to increased disease, violence, crime, abuse, and victimization of the chronically homeless. And so, as a city, we're particularly concerned about efforts to distribute materials that have the effect of encouraging people to remain in the encampment. I am sure that these efforts are well-intentioned, but we need to be very careful about anything that might send a message that an encampment is a good place to be, because that could be contributing to the victimization of the chronically homeless. People respond to the signals that are sent through aid, not because they're homeless, but because they're people. And as a community, we need to send the message that everyone belongs under a roof, indoors, in a warm bed. We need to guide people in these circumstances toward warm shelter and toward treatment for their issues, and avoid doing anything that signals to any human being that we think where they belong is under a bridge. So for the medium term, we think the framework we've laid out in the working group report is going to make a major difference. In the short term, we have to rely on a balance of practical resources, compassionate care, and the enforcement required for health and safety needs. Our intention is not to be punitive. Our focus is on the safety of all concerned. And I spent some time under the bridge this morning, trying to get to know the situation, talking to some of the individuals who are concerned. These are not bad people. These are people who are in a very bad situation. And again, for a number of different reasons, and there's probably as many different reasons as there are people, which was, by my estimation, between 15 and 20 who actually spent the night there. Everyone's got their story, but a lot of them have stories that have to do with being unwilling or unable to take advantage of some of the services our community provides. And the reality is, I don't have the right to drag somebody into services they're not willing to accept. But the question that's before the city is, do they have a right to refuse those services and remain in a situation that may be posing a threat to them as well as to others? These situations were easy to deal with. They would have been fixed a long time ago. But we're striking the best balance that we can to find a way to handle this compassionately and safely. And as we have in funding some of what we're already doing, we're going to rely on the council's support for continuing to guide the community forward in this area. I know a lot of people here, again, are here to discuss the issue. And so I know the council's got some important business to take care of. I got a few things to take care of in my office, but I'll make a point of being back here to listen. As we listen to any ideas in this administration, the thing that will get our attention most is anything that points to a documented track record of delivering results. In this case, results meaning getting people indoors and out of the cycle of chronic homelessness so that they can be better off. That's all I've got by way of an update. Happy to see if there's anything from the council.
A few questions, Mayor?
Sure.
We'll do 2 per council this way. Mr. Davis.
Yes. Could you share briefly how your administration came up with the 24-hour notice situation? Because that seemed to catch a lot of people off guard. I saw it on the news, and I wasn't able to respond. So I don't know if you sent things to the city council, some administration, other parts, but all of a sudden I was just seeing all over Facebook this 40-hour notice that was nailed up there. Could you come to explain that? And number 2, could you go over for the public what are the criteria for the Fuse project? You talked about that's going to be coming up in our area. Could you go over the criteria of people who would be housed in that home, that apartments? Could you go over the criteria and in terms of that? Because you've mentioned that as a part of this would help people off. So maybe if you or anybody from your office want to go clearly so the public would know, because I get asked that a lot. What are the criteria and how, if those criteria will help the people under the bridge? That's what is so important to know.
The answer to the first question is that this is pursuant to the Public Safety State Code. So we got some legal advice that it would be a good idea to post notice in advance rather than acting without that notice. It's a bit of a complex legal area because technically the city is citing itself. What's happening is it's a nuisance property in public space. And so the city's own public right-of-way has become a public nuisance under Indiana law. And our legal team advised that needed to be posted. As far as how to take advantage of the services offered at the Fuse units, I think the most important thing for people to know is that permanent supportive housing is not the same as some of the requirements you have for HUD or for admission to places like the Center for the Homeless. So specifically, permanent supportive housing does not require passing drug screens or breathalyzers. The units are being selected based on the kind of protocol you would use for any scattered site provider. But the admission is based on need. Again, for a little more background on how that intake model works in collaboration with the permanent supportive housing, I encourage people to consult the working group report, and we post that online for reference.
In terms, and so that same requirement would be for the same housing there from that standpoint?
Yes.
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 Okay. Is there any way, instead of them having to go through the whole document, is there any way for that particular piece for requirements can be highlighted and so people can see that? Because that's a pretty big document. But can that just be pulled out and there'd be a place?
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll work with our partners at the opening of the Fuse Center to make sure there's some kind of easy to understand information, and we'll make sure to circulate that as well.
And they can get it online?
Yes, we can do that.
Travis?
Thank you, Vice President Davis. Dr. Barnes?
Oh, thank you.
Joe Barone?
I'm fine, thank you.
Randy? Regina?
Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate you coming.
Thanks.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to join the committee of the whole.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
You sitting over past me.
The Committee of the Whole is now in session. This is the portion of the council meeting where the full council meets as a committee. During each ordinance, the public will have an opportunity to speak either in favor or against. Your comments will be limited to 5 minutes. With that, would the city clerk please read 7217.
7217, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending Chapter 21 of the South Bend Municipal Code, Article 2, residential districts to amend average front setback provisions, Articles 3, commercial/mixed-use districts to remove maximum area requirements for outdoor seating for restaurants in the O Office District, LB Local District, and the CB Community Business District, and add provisions to allow outdoor seating in the GB General Business District, and Article 7, general regulations to allow requirements, landscaping to be placed within the right-of-way, and exempt the MU use district from minimum parking requirements.
And Council Attorney, is it appropriate to entertain a motion to hear 7217, 7317, and 7417, just for purposes of public hearing together?
Yes.
Okay. Could I entertain a motion?
Second.
Did somebody say so moved?
So moved, yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. City Clerk, would you please also read 7317 and 7417?
7317, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending Chapter 21 of the South Bend Municipal Code, Article 1, base provisions to revise clear site area requirements and private street widths. Article 2, residential districts to revise grade level improvement standards, and Article 3, commercial mixed-use districts to revive drive-through facility standards. Public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending Chapter 1 of the Chapter 21 of the South Bend Municipal Code, Article 1, by allowing uses permitted in a less intense district to be permitted in a more intense district.
And before the committee report, just for members of the public, just so you're aware, these three bills are dealing with the same subject matter, and that's why we're hearing them for purposes of public hearing together. And with that, is there a committee report regarding all three bills?
The Zoning and Organization Committee met this afternoon, and we bring all three bills to you with a favorable report.
Thank you. Is there a presenter, please?
Good evening, Angela Smith from the Area Plan Commission with offices located on the 11th floor of this building. Thanks to our very lengthy titles, I think Clerk Fowler has about highlighted everything within these text amendments. What you have before you are 3 text amendments that deal with issues that we have found as being problematic within the zoning ordinance for South Bend. The first deals with things that are commonly sought before the Area Board of Zoning Appeals or before the Plan Commission for variances from development standards. This includes parking in the mixed-use district, allowing landscaping in a tree lawn instead of what's on the property, and the average setback for nonconformance, among a couple other things. The outdoor seating is an exciting addition to encourage pedestrian activity and interaction in the commercial districts as well. The second set of items deal with engineering standards that have also been reviewed by the engineering department in the city of South Bend. These primarily deal with private streets, the clear sight triangles, and some grade level improvements within the engineering sections of the ordinance. And the final ordinance deals with the use tables that you find in our zoning district. Currently in the South Bend ordinance, we list an exorbitant number of uses, everything to very specific things like haberdasheries to general things like retail uses. This would allow, if you have a more intense district, such as an industrial district, you would be allowed to do the uses that could be found in some of the other districts, with the exception of residential. So these just kind of follow the logic that if you're a more intense zoned district, it seems logical to allow something that might be allowed, say, in a mixed-use district as well, as opposed to making somebody rezone their property. The process that we have right now, it puts an extreme burden on the property owner and often leads to properties that aren't zoned properly for the neighborhood that they're in, because they're then being zoned for a specific use and not necessarily the district that's located. All of these come to you from the Plan Commission with a favorable recommendation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council? Yes?
For the young audience, can you explain a haberdashery?
Hat store.
There you go, Kevin. So,
I had to look it up as well.
really? Showing my age. How many ordinances, or how many variances have you seen in the last year or two that came before us that this will take care of?
In terms of variances, what we've seen with the Area Board of Zoning Appeals is we've seen a significant increase. We now have, on average, about 20 items on the agenda, which will make a Board of Zoning Appeals sometimes 4 hours long, very lengthy. Not all of those are city because they do hear things in the county, but more than half of them that come before the city, before the Area Board of Zoning Appeals is the city. For instance, the parking in the mixed-use district, about 40% of all of the parking variances that come before the Area Board of Zoning Appeals have to do with parking in the mixed-use district, and all of them are granted. That's always a clear sign to us as the planning staff that that's probably a section of our ordinance that's broken and needs to be addressed.
So the city has blessed these changes?
This is a conjunction between the building department, the Department of Community Investment, our office, and the engineering office.
And last question, this will streamline business.
This should encourage development within the city.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, we'll move to the public portion. Anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor? Please state your name and address.
Good evening, Michael DeVito, planner with the city's Department of Community Investment, with offices on the 14th floor of this building. As Angela mentioned, Community Investment worked closely with the area plan and building staffs on developing language on all these zoning ordinance quick fixes that you see before you. These ordinances would reduce unnecessary rezoning and variance requests that serve to hold back reinvestment in the community. So again, these are rezoning requests that nearly always get approved. So what we're really looking to do here tonight is have our rules match with our policy. So with on Bill 7217 regarding the common variances, these ordinance changes would allow buildings to be built to better blend with the existing neighborhood context, would allow more landscaping to be placed, and add to the vibrancy of business districts. We believe that these proposed changes, especially regarding the parking, would unlock the potential for a good amount of investment by small business owners and entrepreneurs. On 7317 regarding the engineering standards, we believe the ordinance change would reduce overbuilding of paved surfaces, would allow better urban design outcomes in urban contexts. And on the pyramiding uses, Bill 7417 would allow development projects that are less intense than what the zoning ordinance already allows to proceed, while preserving that underlying zoning for other future allowable uses as the market conditions and land uses change over time. And to President Scott's question, I know as we went through this process, we looked at the BZA agendas and started circling ones that would be taken care of with the quick fix. And it depended a bit by the month, but anywhere from maybe 15 to as much as 50% of the ones that at least were on the agenda for city business would be taken care of by these. Thank you.
Jesse Davis, Appeal Box 10205, South Bend, Indiana. I'm actually for this if it's going to bring more people downtown, make things easier, maybe help some businesses thrive. The one thing I have some questions about though is the outdoor seating and the landscaping and so forth in the right of way. That's already creating a problem downtown with people who are handicapped trying to get around. I've shot a couple videos trying to maneuver through town, and I was walking. I wasn't in a wheelchair, I wasn't on a scooter, I wasn't on crutches. It's very difficult with some of these big planters. We got apes hanging out the sidewalk, we got signs, and a lot of the restaurants have these big, huge areas for outdoor seating. And when you've got a crowd downtown, and even when it's not so big of a crowd, it makes it very difficult to maneuver in and out with street signs and so forth. So did they take all that into consideration before you pass this to make sure that it is ADA compliant and that people that are handicapped are going to be able to maneuver around through these areas with the extra landscaping in the right-of-way and these outdoor seating areas?
Seeing no one else in favor, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing no one, the public portion is closed.
Question?
Presenter has 5 minutes for rebuttal, and then we'll open up the questions if you have a question.
Sure. In terms of the outdoor seating and ADA compliancy, first and foremost, the federal laws always trump anything at the local zoning ordinance. A second point is the zoning ordinance only applies to privately owned property. So if there are issues within the right-of-way, those are covered by the Board of Public Works. I know that they also work to make sure, or they take into consideration, there's always a 5-foot path for ADA compliancy, and those, how that's enforced on a weekend might be a little bit difficult. I don't know that the Board of Public Works is working during some of these times, but I'm sure they will continue to look into that. The landscaping in the right-of-way is typically in a tree lawn, so it's not in an area at a crosswalk or anything that would interfere with the ADA compliancy.
Question for you. So therefore, the issues that Mr. Davis addressed that we had talked about definitely basically were decided, more likely have been decided to the Board of Public Works?
In the downtown area, probably, because most of the stuff in the sidewalks in downtown tend to be in the public right-of-way. There's nothing in these ordinances that change the setback requirements or change the placement requirements. All of the areas that address outdoor seating require that they not obstruct any pedestrian traffic or safe travel to a business storefront, for instance.
Does the Board of Public Works have power to enforce through the building department or through code or through any police or anything else, or is that only a council action or a mayor's call? Does the Board of Public, are you aware of any of that?
As far as I know, the Board of Public Works has complete control over everything that happens in the right of way. I believe, as the mayor was speaking of earlier today, it's city-owned property. The city has the right to enforce anything within that, and that would cover anything within their right of way.
So they are not enforcing that issue that Mr. Davis talked about possibly?
I'm not sure who
I know,
would be in charge
but
of that.
let me rephrase that. If there is a problem with enforcement, then we have to address that at the Board of Public Works issue then?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Brode?
Yes, thank you. So these are well-founded in terms of applications, petitions that have come to BZA or Area Plan Commission. So I appreciate that. Second point is, while this is the nuts and bolts, if we approve this tonight, what would your office typically provide in terms of disseminating these changes to the public? Because after all, this is, extraordinary. It's outside of a whole rezoning chapter, the whole code change. So how, and I think to capitalize on the benefits that have been enumerated for businesses, right, and for development, which a number of these will impact.
So what can we expect as a community from the Area Plan Commission staff, or perhaps our own community investment staff, to actually roll these out, to communicate them to the public, and to actually see if we can up-tempo some of the investments?
One of the things we do is the city ordinances are maintained on Unicode, which are only periodically updated as enough ordinances come through. But the Area Plan Commission staff usually updates the ordinances that are hosted on our site within a week. We usually have to have a lot of time for the mayor to sign it and everything, but we usually have those updates done as quickly as possible. Also, knowing that these were coming, we have been reaching out to the community in many formats. I met with the Board of Realtors, I've met with the Home Builders Association. These have been in extensive discussions in front of the Area Plan Commission and the Area Board of Zoning Appeals at all of their public hearings for the last several months. So we've been working along those lines. Our office is also talking about highlighting a section of our website that has recent changes. That actually came out of a discussion with the Board of Realtors, who said, you know, if there was a place where we could go to see what the most recent changes were. So we're currently working in our department on reformatting our main page of the Area Plan Commission site to make it more readily available and more obvious to the public, so they don't have to sort through to the agendas and stuff for us.
Great, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you. I'll entertain a motion from council.
Make a
might
motion
need to do-
We gotta vote.
7217 to the full council favorably.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries.
Make a motion send 7317 to the full council favorably.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries.
Make a motion send 7417 to the full council favorably.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Could I entertain a motion to continue 7817 and 7917
So moved.
indefinitely? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to rise and resolve from the committee of the whole.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Full council is now back in session. Ms. Fowler, would you please give third reading to 7217?
Third reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending Chapter 21 of the South Bend Municipal Code, Article 2, Residential Districts to amend average front setback provisions, Article Number 3, Commercial/Mixed-Use Districts to remove maximum area requirements for outdoor seating for restaurants in the O Office District, BL Local Business District, and the CB Community Business District, and add provisions to allow outdoor seating in the GP General Business District, and Article 7, General Regulations to allow landscaping to be placed within the right-of-way and exempt the UM Mixed Use District from minimum parking requirements.
Move for the passage of Bill 72-17.
Second.
Ms. Fowler?
Councilmember Preston.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Broden.
Aye.
Councilmember Varner.
Aye.
Vice President Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Furlick.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
President Scott.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Third reading on 7317, please.
7317, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending Chapter 21 of the South Bend Municipal Code, Article 1, Basic Provisions to revise clear site area requirements and private street widths, Articles 2, Residential Districts to revise grade level improvement standards, and Articles 3, Commercial/Mixed-Use Districts to revise drive-through facility standards.
Move for the passage of Bill 73-17.
Second.
Ms. Fowler?
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Broden.
Aye.
Councilmember Varner.
Aye.
Vice President Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Furlick.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Preston.
Aye.
President Scott.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Third reading on 7417, please.
7417, third reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending Chapter 21 of the South Bend Municipal Code, Article 1, by allowing use permitted in a less intense district to be permitted in a more intense district.
Motion for passage.
Second.
Ms. Fowler?
Councilmember Broden.
Aye.
Councilmember Varner.
Aye.
Vice President Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Furlick.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Preston.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
President Scott.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Move to resolutions. Would you please give reading to 1770?
1770, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving a petition of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals for property located at 3419 West Washington Street.
Thank you. Is there a committee report?
Yes, Mr. President. The zoning annexation met this afternoon, and we bring Bill 1770 to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Vice President Davis. Is there a presenter?
Ioka Pake, Zoning and Business Services Administrator with the Building Department at 125 Lafayette, Suite 100. The special exception petition for a community center in an SF2 single-family, two-family district comes to you with a favorable recommendation from the Area Board of Zoning Appeals. The ABZA also approved some parking and landscaping variances as part of the petition. The building as it exists now is a legally non-conforming building, and the proposed changes require that a special exception be applied for before we can issue any permits for it. No one spoke in remonstrance at the ABZA meeting, and the petitioner is here to answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you. Council, any questions right now for the presenter? Great. Petitioner, would you please come up and give a brief statement?
Good evening. My name is Chris Chalkley. I'm with Jones Peter Rafinski. Our address is 325 South Lafayette Boulevard. Give you a quick overview of the project. I'm here representing the Department of Venues, Parks, and Arts, and we've been working with them on the renovation and additions to the existing Charles Black Center. Approximately 14,000 square feet of existing space is being renovated. That would include office improvements, storage areas, improvements of the existing gymnasium, and some other much needed improvements. The other part of it is the 11,000 square foot of building addition that includes an expansion of the existing gymnasium to the north, as well as a new exercise facility and even a bike shop repair area. Those improvements are happening to the north and east side of the building. One of the biggest parts of the project is we're actually expanding the front entrance, so it's projected so you can see it from both Washington Street as well as the existing parking lot.
Great. Any questions from council members? Seeing none, we'll open up to the public. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on 1770, please come to the podium. Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak against 1770, please come to the podium. Seeing none, turn back to council.
Move for adoption of 1770.
Second.
Ms. Fowler.
Councilmember Varner.
Aye.
Vice President Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Furlick.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Preston.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Broden.
Aye.
President Scott.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. First readings, please. 8017.
First readings, 8017. First reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving an interlocal agreement between the City of South Bend and the County of St. Joseph to provide city management responsibilities for Historic Preservation Commission of South Bend and St. Joseph County, the HPC, and amending Chapter 2, Article 4, Section 2-13, Subpart B, 7 of the South Bend Municipal Code to include this as an administrative function of the Department of Community Investment.
Thank you. Can I entertain a motion to send this to Community Investment for 1127?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Unfinished business, please. 1774.
Motion to send 1774 to BZA for 12/6 and set for second and third reading on 12/11.
Correct.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. That will conclude the business on ordinances. We'll now turn to the Boyd versus HPC appeal. This is COA number 2017-0602A. Is Mr. Boyd here?
Hall, is he?
Can someone check the hallway, please?
Is HPC here?
Yes.
been present.
HPC will, Mr. Boyd has first presentation, so go to the,
Mr.
I have a question.
hold on a minute. Mr. Boyd, Eric Boyd, are you here? I'll call it 3 times. Eric Boyd, are you here? Mr. Eric Boyd, last call. Ms. Fowler, have you heard anything?
No.
I
Not
will defer to our attorney, our rookie attorney.
He is not asked to table or continue it, so we go ahead and hear from HPC.
Could we check? I have
All right, Ms. White, you had a,
in the past, and this could be different, that we've always wanted to make sure that the petitioner was here. So I don't know what the time frame might be in terms, if he's not present, he hasn't contacted the council. So we were to go ahead, he is the petitioner. And I know we can continue. with the
Council
hearing.
is free to do that on
Yeah.
motion, yes.
Yeah.
Motion to continue.
hold,
No, I'm saying,
Wait a minute, we
continue
got-
with the hearing without the petitioner. Just wanted to get a sense of that.
clarify that, please, Ms. White.
You wanted to do
I
what?
was asking a question that in the past, when the petitioner has not been present, we've always done our best to ensure that the petitioner, and trying to reach out to confirm why the petitioner was not here.
That's true. Correct.
Because this is a hearing and not an actual presenting a bill. I want to make sure if we can do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's my question.
A hearing versus a bill for the public. In the past, the council has been gracious to continue if one of the presenters has not been present. I know we were in communication with Mr. Boyd earlier this afternoon with the idea that he was going to be here. Ms. Roden, you had a question.
So just, we could check with him, correct, and we can maybe suspend or put this agenda item, suspend it for the time being, move to the next agenda item? In other words,
We could do that
reach out to him and just make sure nothing's
later,
gone awry.
before this meeting ends.
I can, yeah, and I
if
can
someone
step
could
out and
maybe
try to call him.
dispense to do that now.
Ms. Preston.
That was gonna be my question, if we could do that, just because we
Okay.
did, normally we don't finish this early, right?
And this is the process.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And this has been the process before to continue to the later portion of this meeting.
We need a
Um,
motion.
And give them every benefit that we can
Cool.
in our good Midwest graces.
Is it a suspension of the rules? And
Yes.
motion to suspend the rules and move new business and privilege of the floor before the Boyd versus HPC appeal.
Okay.
Okay.
We have information that he is walking in.
I withdraw the motion.
Okay.
Bless his heart. The rest we do down south.
He's walking
Into the building.
He walked into the question.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break? It's 7:43, 5 minutes from now.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? 5-minute break. Be back at 7:48.
I know.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Basically, it should have been opening press.
We want a record of time.
Okay. It was sloppy. Nah. Really sloppy.
Yeah, you better get that.
We get a big bucks, buddy. Let's put Bob on this.
When your court is stated at 9:18, you need to be there before, and you may have to work till 11 o'clock.
Hey, I text him, he texts back. Okay, he said he's walking in. Okay.
It's cold up there.
I go past it every day.
Yeah, he said he was just walking. where he's going. So what'd you do for him? We wandered over to the chicken. We saw Fred over there. Fred over there. Hadn't seen him for a while. Nice. And by the way,
Who's this lady up here? That's the new attorney? Huh? Who? No, one of the person. I'm tired. Mega clothes.
why we just grabbed the whole break.
He was up Indiana Avenue when you were designing also
so we pretty much at some point.
I don't know.
So he was walking in.
He's back there.
Okay.
And
That's nice.
and built a life turnaround so fast. What happened to Bishop Alfred? Is he still in St. Louis?
Woman.
Is he here? Yeah, I saw him. He's sitting right in the back.
What's up?
He's sitting right in the back, always in the back. And we put 30 of those skins out, they took them off. We had them all on the counter.
Oh, there it is.
You see him right in the back?
Okay, we're gonna be ready to go. Yeah.
Linda was in, she went to the post.
She was there?
Yeah, she's been there 2 years in a row. He spoke, she sings in the choir there. There was a choir that,
She sang Sunday?
she sang Friday, all the way to Sunday. She's back, like, I haven't seen her yet. She's going 2 years in a row. St. Louis.
Council's now back in session. Okay, we will hear the appeal hearing for Mr. Boyd versus HPC appeal of the COA number 2017-0602A. So under this process, the petitioner will have maximum 20 minutes to make a presentation of a case which needs to address specific issues under review, statement of position by the petitioner or his attorney or her attorney, relative witness statements, if any, and requested action which the petitioner is seeking. After that, HPC Preservation Commission will have a maximum of 20 minutes to include statement of the position of HPC by their attorney, relevant witness statements, if any, request action of HPC. Petitioner will have a maximum of 5 minutes for rebuttal. Common counsel may ask questions of the party up to the maximum of 15 minutes for this portion of the public hearing. Common counsel shall review actions at HPC and appeal before them to determine whether actions are 1, arbitrary, capricious, and abuse of discretion, or otherwise not in accordance with the applicable law. B, or 2, contrary to constitutional rights, power, privilege, or immunity. 3, or C, in excessive of statutory jurisdiction, authority, limitations, or statutory rights. 4, without observation of the procedures required by applicable law and or ordinance, and or supported by substantial evidence. Each council member having the opportunity to comment before the motion of disposition on the appeal process is accepted by the chairperson. Proper motions of the common council will be acknowledged by the chairperson of either sustaining the action of the HPC or overruling their decision based on the evidence provided by the parties and the governing law, followed by the roll call vote by the common council. Office of the clerk shall, within a reasonable period of time, send confirmation of the common council's actions to all parties, maintain minutes of the public hearing as part of the regular meeting with the common council. At this point, the common council is acting in a quasi-judicial role on this. So the public does not have any input on this. This is Mr. Boyd making his case and HPC making their case, and then it's back to council for questions and final ruling. We will do that. I'll ask Mr. Varner to do the time. And Mr. Boyd, are you ready? Please state your name and address for the record. Let me let Mr. Varner get a timer up. 20 minutes. Good?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Boyd, go ahead.
My name's Eric Boyd. 1240 West Thomas Street is the address. I'm here on behalf of myself and the people of Thomas Street and the west side of South Bend, responding to the HPC's decision and appealing it. The facts as they stand, 1240 West Thomas is a historical property here in St. Joseph County. September 2016, I submitted my first COA to historical preservation. Upon that time, I was issued a notice of hearing, an agenda of historical preservation with the following attachments. Staff reports, description of the structure, the project, staff recommendations, photos, as well that were taken by HPC. That application was denied. However, I was given proper notice of an admissible administrative hearing and given copies of evidence before the municipal hearing via U.S. mail. Now, the second time I applied to HPC was a completely different experience. June 2017 of this year, I submitted another application to HPC. Upon that time, HPC failed to issue me a notice of hearing via U.S. mail under Robert's Rules of Order. They also withheld evidence, photos, staff reports, and staff recommendations from multiple applicants during the June 19th, 2017 municipal administrative hearing. HPC knowingly violated their standard administrative policies and procedures by failing to provide the public and applicants with the right to inspect and receive notice of hearing and evidence and documents. The commissioners acknowledged their omission in violation of policies and procedures, but offered no documents to be inspected by the applicants at that hearing. Instead, they redirected blame to the St. Joseph County building mailroom and continued the hearing. During that hearing, I had many discrepancies with the information that was verbally given to me. One, the staff report contained no information regarding the building permit that was issued for this project for the current roof that is there standing now. Also, HPC's interpretation of the structural engineer's report was incorrect. They made reference to joists spanning 17.5 feet. Those were floor joists. My application was for a roof. The structural report given to them was wrote pretty much in layman terms, and I was not contacted, I guess, to decipher that information, and they went with, I guess, what they had. They also noted that there was multiple deficiencies in the monoslope roof, referred to the 2x4 joist spanning 10 inches. This is incorrect as well. The roof that we constructed was permitted by St. Joseph County Building Department. We were stopped by St. Joseph County's Building Department. When we were stopped, that is how the roof is. So what the structural engineer did was looked at the roof in its state, did the calculations of the weight load, and determined that the completion of the blueprints that we had was correct. He also determined that those were not deficiencies, it's an incomplete project. The other discrepancies that we had with HBC during that hearing is that HBC attempted to suggest that the application, if granted, would not be in accordance to the remedies or the options given by the St. Joseph County Building Department. They supplied false information. The building department issued us information, and there was correspondences that went back and forth. However, they only showed correspondences that supported their argument. In your documents, you have Exhibit J. That information in front of you is a remedy given by the building department. Basically, the building department said if HPC grants this permit for the roof as it is, we can move forward as a remedy. That document was not given to the commissioners that were voting on my roof. Another discrepancy that I have is that the president stated long-term preservation of the structure and safety of its occupants are not served by this installation. HPC, by virtue of common council, jurisdiction is limited to the exterior of historical properties. Nowhere in the South Bend Municipal Code does it give HPC the right or power to issue occupancy permits or determine a structure's shortened lifespan because of the roof choice. St. Joseph County Building Commissioner requested a state registered structural engineer evaluate the project. The engineer's professional findings differ from HPC's non-jurisdictional opinions. Basically, how did we get to this point? The historical information is as such. The applicant submitted a building permit, blueprints, and elevations to the building department in 2015. A building permit was issued, BD 15005044, which the applicant executed that building permit and constructed that roof. About a year later, HPC pressured the building department to revoke that permit. In HPC's original denial letter, September 19, 2016, they made claims of assistance from community investments. The applicant has requested funding from community investments since 2015, and that has not materialized. In 2017, it took community investment 53 days to respond to emails. In 2015, it took community investment about 17 months to respond to emails. As far as the background of this case, HPC has given contrary information regarding the ordinance and the laws regarding their organization. The applicant has received this misleading information regarding the interior of the building. HPC has issued multiple verbal and written objections to the interior courtyard. HPC staff has displayed business cards, on the applicant's property with handwritten messages requesting communication about an interior courtyard. The owner finds this behavior intrusive and a violation of his rights, considering HPC has no jurisdiction over interior design of historical buildings per City Ordinance 9495-04. The applicant was told that he needs to file a COA with Historical Preservation in order to park a construction trailer on a job site to do construction on a landmark in St. Joseph County. There is no legal ordinance or applicable law to support this HPC claim. On December 8, 2016, a temporary improvement construction trailer permit BD 160062459 was reviewed by the zoning business administrator and was issued by St. Joseph County Building Commissioner despite HPC's unfound claims. As far as the application of standards and laws and ordinances, key point number 1, Robert's Rules of Order. The following government body, known respectfully as the City of South Bend and St. Joseph County, observe the following procedure municipal guidelines known as Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order requires all parties to be notified of meetings in the form of an agenda with as much notice as possible. The person planning or facilitating the meeting should have the agenda or the list arranged in the order of priority of things to accomplish at the meeting. Everyone attending the meeting should receive a copy of this agenda. Based on the rules of Robert's Rules of Order, all parties need to be notified well in advance of the agenda. Robert's Rules of Order can only be broken under Rule 25, which is a motion to suspend the rules. At no point in time did historical preservation call for a motion to suspend the rules of order. Therefore, HBC operated without the observance of the policies and procedures and failing to send notification of a municipal administrative hearing via U.S. mail to all applicants. For example, Meridian Street area is also a preservation society here in the state of Indiana. Under their rules and regulations, Municipal Code IAC 1-1-18 says as such, upon receipt of an application of a COA, the Commission shall consider the matter with or without a hearing, as it deems appropriate. No certificate shall be denied without a hearing if requested by the applicant, or granted without a hearing if the hearing is promptly requested by the interested party. If the hearing is held, it shall be upon not less than 15 days' notice to the applicant, and shall not be held until at least 15 days after the notice has been mailed to the person specified in Rule 17.1. Said notice must be waived by applicant. The argument is municipal codes for preservation of Meridian Street area is subjected to the jurisdiction of Meridian Street. However, its principle and legal standard can be applied to our local Historic Preservation Commission. The preservation of Meridian Street area, located in Indiana, is required by law a 15-day notice via U.S. mail to all municipal administrative hearings to all applicants. It also requires that the hearing can only be held 15 days after the notice has been mailed to the person specified as the applicant. The Historical Preservation Commission of South Bend and St. Joseph County notice of hearing and/or evidence to be used in a hearing was postmarked June 14, 2017, and did not arrive to the applicant until a week after the hearing. The applicant finds this to be substandard, unprofessional, and inconsistent with administrative practices of other historical preservation commissions in the state of Indiana. Observance of the state law as far as the access to public records. The fundamental philosophy of the American constitutional form of representative government is that the government is the servant of the people and not their masters. This chapter shall be liberally construed to imply this policy and place the burden of proof of non-disclosure of public record on the public agency that would deny access to the record, not the person seeking to inspect and copy the record. Public record means the following: any writing, paper, report, study, map, photo, book, card, tape, recording, or other material that is created, received, maintained, or filed by or with a public agency. The argument is, at no point did the public agency known as Historical Preservation of South Bend and St. Joseph County exercise its administrative powers in the state of Indiana properly by not informing the applicant of the administrative hearing. At no point in time did the public agency known as Historical Preservation Commission of South Bend and St. Joseph County exercise its administrative powers in the state of Indiana by informing the applicant of the COA application, or that it was completed, or that it was available for the public to inspect. The applicant finds that HPC violated Indiana Public Access Law IC 5-14-1 by the following actions. 1. Failure to comply and properly mail public and municipal hearing documents. B. Failure to notify parties of the completion and availability of the COA, staff reports, staff recommendations, or other documents for public inspection. I find that the City of South Bend has given HPC the right and the ability to award COAs and building permits, even if the property or the construction of the property is deemed not appropriate or architecturally correct under the South Bend City Ordinance 9495-04 Hardship Clause, Powers and Duties, page 7. A deterrent to the public welfare if the proposed construction, reconstruction, alteration, demolition, or moving is permitted even though it is not deemed appropriate, and the potential hardship of that denial of a certificate of appropriateness would cause the applicant. The argument is that the Common Council gave Historical Preservation the power to issue a COA even if the construction is not deemed appropriate. However, HBC refuses to evaluate the totality of the situation and the economical hardship their denial is causing. Attached in the exhibit, you will find 5 police reports. They are for illegal dumping, vandalism, and theft. The property owner has invested over $1,000 this year alone in security costs. The roof was permitted by St. Joseph County Building Department under building permit 15005044. Regardless of the reason, mistake, error, omission, the roof was authorized by the city. HBC has suggested for years community investments is going to pay for a flat roof. To this day, nothing has been invested by the city of South Bend. The application of the ordinance regarding powers and duties. The last time we met and I filed an appeal, I asked Historical Preservation for individual preservation plan. During that hearing, we discovered in 47 odd years, I think about 47 years, HBC has not done an individual preservation plan, which is required by the state for any property. Today I come to tell you I still don't have a preservation plan for my property. In response to that, they tell me that they need access to the interior of my building to make an exterior building plan. The difference between the 2 appeals. The first appeal we had asked for, in addition to the rear, we had also asked for a partial roof. After meeting with the building department, the building commissioner, and filling the views of everyone involved and the desires of HPC, we compromised and we asked HPC for a roof for the entire building, hoping that that compromise would allow us to finish the project. However, they still would not approve it.
Mr. Boyd, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. The appeal in front of you today is simply asking for what the city started, a mono roof. The city issued a permit, we executed the permit, the city stopped the permit. That is the difference between the 2. We're also asking for an open courtyard. The structural engineer has reviewed the plans. There are no concerns regarding the courtyard. We're here today as people from the west side asking for an understanding. We're also asking that the members of the Common Council approve the roof that was once approved by the city. We're asking that you restore the building that was built by the city. We're asking not for vacant lots. We're asking for economic development on our side of town. Here today are people of the west side, developers, residents, business owners. We're asking for you to help us make the west side proud. I ask that my time be given for witnesses. Thank you.
Do you have any witnesses at this point?
Anyone that wants to speak.
No, sir. You would have to specify who they are and what they're going to speak on.
Not a problem. From the west side of South Bend, here in the room, speaking on my behalf, my wife is here. She'll speak on this floor. Kirsten Champer.
It's relative statements regarding this.
Yes.
Exactly. Got it. And you have 3.5 minutes left, sir.
Thank you.
State your name and address, please.
Hi. I'm Kirsten Champer, and I'm at 1240 West Thomas Street. I'm here to speak on behalf of the economic hardships. Me being Mr. Boyd's wife and other half, I think better half, I can attest that it's been very financially difficult, one, to secure the building. In some of the police reports that you find, that someone came and shot BB guns. They shot a BB gun to the dump truck that we had. And the window, you know, it's just not something we can just go and get replaced. That's a very old dump truck. So that's a very expensive window we'll have to replace. And then also they shot up some of the windows to the actual facility. So we had to board those up. We have to replace those windows. Again, the illegal dumping out there. Someone had to clean it up and pay for the dumping fee. And then also just the time it takes, you know, gas going down there, checking on the building, and then the security camera system we had to put in just to kind of make sure the building stayed secured, because there were kids coming by, knocking over the stuff. There were people coming, just throwing stuff in our dumpster. They were throwing stuff in the building. So this building staying vacant and has really kind of caused some problems for us, in addition to having to pay for the damages that have occurred just due to the building having to sit vacant. When we had work done, it was a lot calmer. People were coming by. They recognized the fact that this is a project that's moving forward. But now that there is no work being done, it's kind of, we're having some problems keeping the building secure and having to replace the building. And I'm done. Is that my 3 minutes?
Quickly, you have 1:09.
Okay. Michael Clark.
Name and address, sir.
Michael Clark, 1222 West West Street. I've known this young man since he started that ordeal. That's a building that was burned out, and no one else in the city wanted it. He has an ideal, he has a dream. I don't see anybody else putting that kind of money on that street just yet. If the man's going to put his money, and he did the proper thing, he got a permit. He went, he paid his money, he did his work, and he paid it. And now the Historical Foundation says that's not good enough. They want a flat roof. Well, to me, if they want a flat roof, they should pay for it.
15 seconds.
Because he did his part. And if you take this from him, this ain't American way. But the law is the law. But he did his part. You do your law. What if it was your money on the line?
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Now we'll have 20 minutes from Historic Preservation to make their presentation. I'll ask Dr. Varner to reset the clock. And when you're ready to go, state your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Brandy Ecker, Deputy County Attorney at the Historic Preservation Commission. I'm with Thorn Grodzick, LLP at 420 Lincoln Way West in Mishawaka, 46545. Mr. Boyd originally applied for and received on or about November 10th, 2011, a routine maintenance exemption to, quote, replace metal roofing to secure the burned out landmark and protect from the elements. The RME was only for repairs to the current roof and not for construction of a different roof style. The RME was originally good for 1 year but was extended upon request until November 10th of 2013. Mr. Boyd, instead of repairing the metal roof per the RME, began constructing a gabled asymmetrical roof on the firehouse sometime after it expired in 2013. In 2015 to 2016, Mr. Boyd filed an application for a building permit, and then sometime later filed an application for a COA, which was application number 2016-0809. That application was for the modifications, quote, roof, window replacement, apply for addition, siding, vinyl, and window replacement is long-term. Current plan is to keep windows boarded up for security reasons. 2 replacement windows have been broken. Color of vinyl siding is brown. Application 2016-0809 was denied by unanimous vote of HPC members present on September 19th of 2016. The decision was appealed to this county council, where it was upheld on a tied vote. Mr. Boyd then appealed that denial to the St. Joseph Superior Court, where the appeal was dismissed. First against the HPC, the St. Joseph County Council, and the St. Joseph County Building Department, and then 2 months later against the City of South Bend. The dismissal was for a 12b6 failure to state a claim. making it a dismissal on the merits. Mr. Boyd filed another COA application, current application 270602A, on June 2nd, 2017, proposing, quote, mono roof, 412 pitch, rise west to east, ending at center of building resting on ledger east stud hall. Low profile mono roof resting south brick wall and interior brick wall open courtyard. 2 of the 3 plan drawings attached to application number 2017-0602A were identical to the plan drawings attached to the previously denied COA application. At the public hearing on application 2017-0602A on June 19, 2017, the HPC staff recommended the application be denied, and that application was denied unanimously by the HPC commissioners present. HPC mailed a copy of its findings on June 23, 2017, setting forth the reasons for denying the application, which were the proposal would alter and modify the structure, facade, architectural integrity, and style by adding a slanted roof. It did not meet the existing character of the structure and was generally not in keeping with the historical character of the building. Also, the application lacked information on the material to be used for completion of the roof or how it would be covered, and the roof proposal was not in keeping with the standards and guidelines for review of certificates of appropriateness. In an appeal of an HPC decision, the Common Council is required to determine only if the action taken by HPC was arbitrary, capricious, an abuse of discretion, or otherwise not in accordance with applicable law, contrary to constitutional right, power, privilege, or immunity, in excess of statutory jurisdiction, authority, limitations, or statutory rights, without observance of procedures required by applicable law or ordinance, or unsupported by substantial evidence. Those are the only bases on which a decision by HPC can be overturned. This application 2017-0602A has been precluded by the final decision made on application number 2016-0809. Claim preclusion applies where a final judgment on the merits has been rendered, which acts as a complete bar to the subsequent action on the same issue or claim between those parties and their privies. Where this doctrine applies, all matters that were or might have been litigated are deemed conclusively decided by the judgment in the prior action. The decision on the merits of the roof alterations were decided in the HPC's denial of application number 2016-0809 and the St. Joseph Superior Court's subsequent final decision on the merits of the appeal, when it dismissed that appeal under Trial Rule 12b-6. Application number 2017-0602A and application number 2016-0809 were substantially similar, making it subject to claim preclusion. The use of identical drawings and photographs in the applications showing similar views and the same changes to the roof show that the proposed roof alterations for both applications are the same. Mr. Boyd, during the June 19, 2017 public meeting, agreed that the staff description of his proposed project, which was identical to the staff description given in the staff report for the earlier application, was correct, making it so Mr. Boyd also agreed that the applications were for the same proposed alterations. Since the issues in application number 2017-0602A have already been subject to a final decision on the merits, Mr. Boyd's appeal should be denied on that basis alone. However, even if this council determines that claim preclusion does not apply in this instance, Mr. Boyd's proposed bases for reversing the HPC's denial of application 2017-0602A are inappropriate. The Common Council may only reverse HPC's decision for the reasons I stated earlier. Most of Mr. Boyd's contentions are irrelevant to those considerations. The HPC did in fact put its notice of hearing in the mail, meeting their administrative policy requirement. It did not knowingly fail to send him a notice of hearing. The HPC did its duty by placing that notice in the mail to be sent to Mr. Boyd. Any failure of the Postal Service or the mailroom to deliver this to Mr. Boyd is not the fault of the Historic Preservation Commission. In addition, Mr. Boyd appeared at the public hearing on June 19th, so there was no harm caused by any failure of delivery of the notice of hearing in question. He obviously found out it was happening at some point. The agenda for the Historic Preservation Commission meeting on June 19th, 2017 was a public agenda, freely accessible online, and was posted as required. Mr. Boyd also asserts that the HPC should have followed similar procedures to the preservation of Meridian Street area. The preservation of Meridian Street area are codes applicable to Meridian Street located in Indianapolis which is under the authority of Meridian Street Preservation Commission, a state-created agency which follows the Indiana Administrative Code. Even if it applied to this case, under 925 IAC 243, the responsibility for notice of an application for a certificate of appropriateness falls on the applicant, not on the Meridian Street Commission. Regardless, this argument does not have anything to do with the Historic Preservation Commission of South Bend and St. Clair County. Mr. Boyd also asserted that the Historic Preservation Commission violated the Access to Public Records Act by failing to affirmatively inform him of the notice of hearing and any associated materials. The Access to Public Records Act requires that a public agency allow a person to inspect and copy the public records of that agency during the regular business hours of that agency upon request. Mr. Boyd never made any such request of HPC to inspect or copy any of those records. The HPC didn't have any duty under the Access to Public Records Act to affirmatively reach out to him. Mr. Boyd also argues that the HPC was required to develop a plan for the firehouse and assist in the administration and implementation of that plan. The HPC, under the ordinances and the statutes, is empowered to make such plans, but is not required to do so in any particular instance. Mr. Boyd's final argument is that the HPC did not consider all three of the required factors in its evaluation of its application for a COA. The HPC is required to consider three factors in all requests for COAs: appropriateness of the proposed action, the detriment to the public welfare if the action is permitted even if it's not deemed appropriate, and the potential hardship of the denial. Mr. Boyd contends that the HPC failed to consider the hardship factor. Mr. Boyd's financial hardship was in fact considered multiple times during the June 19, 2017 public hearing. I provided a transcript of the relevant portions of the recording of the HPC meeting that day, along with an electronic copy of the recording with the HPC's position statement submitted earlier. A full rundown of the various discussions on hardship to Mr. Boyd was provided in the HPC's position statement on pages 13 and 14. Briefly, there was significant discussion about various creative ways Mr. Boyd could reuse the material that he had already used in his illegal roof construction, as well as options for Mr. Boyd to withdraw the current application to obtain further quotes for keeping an in-kind flat roof with different kinds of materials, or less obtrusive designs with different dimensions or styles. The various commissioners even gave Mr. Boyd suggestions for where to look for possible avenues of additional funding if he needed financial assistance to repair the roof in kind with the original. It was Mr. Boyd's decision to go ahead and have the commission vote on the application as it stood, which they then did. HPC demonstrated at the public hearing its understanding of the financial issues and indicated a willingness to work with Mr. Boyd in determining an architecturally appropriate and financially feasible solution to the firehouse roof, which Mr. Boyd ignored. And I now have the Executive Director of the HPC to give a short witness statement before I close.
Great, you have 9 minutes and 51 seconds in count.
Alicia Fiesel, Historic Preservation Commission, South Bend and St. Clair County. I agree with everything that our council has submitted here today, and some of the points that I want to impress upon you is that this is a repeat of the appeal that you've heard before, and so why we're here, it's for the exact same roof. Our commissioners, the Historic Preservation Commission, is mainly looking at the aesthetic look of the exterior of a property. I'm not privy to any claims of asking for interior review. I rarely ever go into an interior of a property unless it's a special field trip, but very rarely. I can't even think of the last time I've done an interior walkthrough, so I'm not sure about that, but because our commissioners are mainly interested in the way the building looks from the exterior, I approved back in 2011 between the former director and I a routine maintenance exclusion, which is the only thing that staff has the authority to do. Is something that's a repair or an in-kind change, and that's what happened in 2011 when Mr. Boyd came before us. The previous director, he had asked for an in-kind repair to the flat roof that was sloped to the back. That's the roof that was originally on there. Originally, it would have been a black rubber membrane roof. At the time, the director gave him a little bit of extra clearance to have a metal material installed instead of the rubber membrane, but the roof form was to remain the same. So if you have a commercial building, it's a rectangular shape. From the front, you wouldn't see any type of roof because it slopes slightly to the back, and that's where all of the water and ice would drain off of it. The roof that's there now is one half of a gabled roof, and that's what the blueprint that Mr. Boyd continues to refer to demonstrates that it will be finalized looking like. It's a gabled roof, but it's asymmetrical, meaning that it comes over the center of the building and drops off, and then this portion of the building will remain an open courtyard. That is why the Historic Preservation Commission has ruled that this is it's not appropriate for the architectural style of the building. Just, expanding on that a little bit, I don't know that an asymmetrical gabled roof with an open courtyard on the other half would be appropriate for any type of roof in South Bend. I haven't seen one. There's a point that's been made by Mr. Boyd that the Historic Preservation Commission has said that some other department, some other agency of the city should be paying for this. And the only thing that I can think of is where those assertions are coming from is various commissioners have given advice on where he could find funding. He's asking for funding. He's asking for any help with materials. These materials on this roof have been donated. So he's asking for help with a roof. If we want a flat roof, who can help me do that? And so our commissioners have offered advice, contact this agency, maybe this agency, just in general. In fact, that goes all the way back to 2011 when Historic Preservation Commission was very much supporting Eric and his endeavor with this building. We want to see him succeed. We have written letters of support for tax abatement from the city of South Bend, and we've written a letter of support for zoning change for this building, in addition to issuing a routine maintenance exclusion for a flat slope roof. So the fact that the roof that he's constructed is inappropriate to the building is the Historic Preservation Commission doing its duty, following its ordinance, and doing what it's enabled to do by law. They've done nothing wrong in saying that this roof that's constructed is a violation of its ordinance. That's what it is. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, the Historic Preservation Commission is ruling on the aesthetics of the exterior of the building. They are ruling on the way that the building looks from the exterior. And they have asked Mr. Boyd in 2 different hearings, the previous one and this most recent one, for quotes. If you're saying that a flat roof is outside of your price range, it's too expensive, let's see the quotes. There's no harm in that. It doesn't cost anything to have a quote. He has not yet to this date provided any quotes for what a flat roof would cost. The other option that the architect on our board had suggested is, okay, so you've gotten the materials donated to you for this asymmetrical gabled roof. Can you show us what it would cost to reuse those materials and bring the roof line down into something more like a hipped roof that would cover the entire structure? Because also, again, they're not finding that an open courtyard or only a roof on half of the building is appropriate. So they're looking for quotes. How much will it cost you to put either a flat sloped roof on, or how much will it cost you to reuse that material that you already have and repurpose it to bring your roof line lower but cover the entire structure? And they've asked for that multiple times, and Mr. Boyd has refuses or failed to provide that information. So at this point, the commission is left with no other options but to approve the appropriateness of the structure that's there. At this point, I would just like to say I'm eager for your vote. I hope that you affirm the decision that the Historic Preservation Commission has made. I'm eager that you'll vote tonight and that this will be behind us, because at this point, this shouldn't be a matter of Historic Preservation Commission. And in fact, it should have been in the hands of our safety agencies for a long time now. The building department and the code enforcement agencies. We should not be held up with Historic Preservation Commission's decision on the aesthetics. The agencies that rule on unsafe building act or building construction in general very much should be taking over at this point and doing what they do to determine if the structure that's there meets our building code requirements. And that's all I have.
I'm sorry, you have 3 minutes left. I didn't give you a 5-minute warning, but you have 3.
In closing, I would like to just reiterate the 5 bases that the council has to overturn an HPC decision. They can find that the decision is arbitrary, capricious, and abuse of discretion or otherwise not in accordance with applicable law, contrary to constitutional right, power, privilege, or immunity, in excess of statutory jurisdiction, authority, limitations, or statutory rights, without observance of procedures required by applicable law and ordinance, or unsupported by substantial evidence. The Historic Preservation Commission acted in accordance with the City of South Bend ordinances and Historic Preservation Commission guidelines when it denied Mr. Boyd's latest Certificate of Appropriateness application. His application was properly denied because it proposed modifications that had already been denied, and such denial had been affirmed and was a final decision on the merits, and because the modifications proposed failed to conform to the architectural integrity of the firehouse. The roof described in the Certificate of Appropriateness application, which has already been constructed, destroys the historical value of the landmark. Historic Preservation Commission respectfully requests that the South Bend Common Council deny Mr. Boyd's appeal and affirm the Historic Preservation Commission's decision to deny Mr. Boyd's Certificate of Appropriateness application number 2017-602A.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this point, Mr. Boyd, you have 5 minutes for a rebuttal. We'll wait until Mr. Varner's ready on the clock. And then after your rebuttal, the Common Council will have 15 minutes for discussion. Any questions? Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, sir, go ahead with your rebuttal.
Thank you. In response to the director of HPC, as far as verbalizing resources in the community, it was actually their legal decision that you were also given. Commissioner Moeller suggested in the statement that you worked with community investments, so it was actually part of their legal decision. It wasn't just a verbal suggestion, and that's what I witnessed was what their legal decision was. So you actually have this document in your possession. Also, the first appeal, when I met with them, I actually gave them these documents in response to discrepancies that were also in their writings. In those documents, which you will see, is an estimate for a flat roof that they said they never got. This was what they were given by South Bend Roofing Company, located on West Washington Street. It's dated actually August 27, 2013. So I actually had a quote for a flat roof before we ever started the construction. And this was given to HBC, and we actually talked about why this was not feasible, because for the membrane alone it was $23,000. That's not the construction, that's just a rubber membrane. And that was the reason why we went with the asymmetrical roof. And this, once again, was given to HBC, which they said they never received. Which we also have a verbal transcript of both hearings. In that transcript, you will hear the verbal conversation with me, with various commissioners talking about this estimate to verify that information if you choose. In response to historical preservation and an illegal roof, once again, under the ordinance, we applied for a roof. We went into the building department. We submitted blueprints. We submitted elevation, and a permit was issued. We took that permit and we started the construction. That permit was stopped by historical preservation. That is why we're here now. We're stopped once again by historical preservation. They talk about the roof takes away from the character of the building. The people on the west side are more concerned about vacant lots, illegal dumping, drug use, crime. When there's eyes in the community, it's a safe community. When there's vacant lots, there's issues. In response to HBC's willingness to work, once again in the transcript you will see where there's conversation with the legal department and historical preservation, communicating with the building department to issue me citations. I don't think that's working with the residents of South Bend. I don't understand why, if you see a hardship with a resident trying to improve a neighborhood, why you would impose violations. it's insult to injury. As far as the roof design and the similarities between the two, once again, the verbal transcript which you have in your possession, we asked for a complete roof. The documents that were given
2 minutes, sir.
at the original hearing was for a complete roof, under the suggestion of the building department. The building department said HPC would like the whole building covered. We tried to compromise and work with them. 3 years later, here we are. We're still trying to work with historical preservation. We've gotten nowhere. We're here now asking for your help with the situation. We're asking that you look at the totality of the situation, look at the hardship that HPC has imposed, and rule fair and accordingly. Thank you. One quick note, this is the packet that she said that they sent me. If you see it's not open, it came a week after my hearing. This was my summons to the hearing. It came a week after the hearing, which she said there was no intro.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll ask Dr. Varner to put 15 minutes on the time. We will have questions from council. Start with Mr. Furlick, the younger one.
Sure. Mr. Boyd, the date of the postmark on the envelope that you did not receive, is that after the hearing?
It's June 14, 2017.
And when was the hearing?
I believe it was the 19th.
June
So
14th.
a few days before the hearing, they put it in the mail.
Okay, so it was postmarked before that date, but you're saying it did not arrive to your house
So
until...
a week after the hearing.
Until the week after the hearing,
Yeah.
okay. And then if I could ask a question
Sure.
of historic preservation, if you don't mind. You had mentioned that there was no substantial change, in your opinion, to the application, that several pictures were used that were similar. Was there a change, though, to the application? It wasn't an identical application, correct? Was there any change to the application?
My understanding was that as far as I know, the pictures were the same, the plans were the same, and he agreed that the staff description of the proposed projects were
Yes.
identical.
I understood your description, but was there a change to the...
It was the written application item that changed.
It was different?
Yeah,
Okay,
the
just
written
wanted to make sure of that
Yeah,
clarification.
the project itself had remained the same, but the way it was written was applied differently.
Was different. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Ms. White?
This is to HPC. You had made mention that really you should not be here at this time in terms of that this is really a building and code issue. At what point have you worked with Mr. Board in regards, because the issue is centering around the style of the roof, correct? That was the first appeal, and the second appeal, which has brought us to this day. And then the new issue is the open courtyard that we're looking at this particular time. But you had made mention that it really is a code issue and a building safety issue. Have you had any conversations with those two entities at all?
There was a code enforcement hearing just the other day, from what I understand.
Well, that was just recent, but leading up to.
That was just recent.
Okay. Have there been any other?
At the time of the last appeal, when it resulted in a tie vote, the building department sent out another letter of violation notice to have the roof removed because the appeal was in Historic Preservation Commission's favor. And it was at that point, or shortly thereafter, where the whole process started all over again when Mr. Boyd submitted another COA application. So that puts the building department and code enforcement on hold until this process is completed.
It's not certain at this point, one way or the other, whether there are safety issues.
I was going to ask that question.
The point that was being made with bringing that up was Historic Preservation Commission's decision has to be dealt with in its entirety first before those can be really assessed.
But the statement was made that this is really, I think if I'm recalling correctly, that really at this point, you shouldn't even be here.
I feel like after the
Okay,
last
that was
appeal was completed, that building and code enforcement were then the agencies that should have taken over. Maybe an interior inspection. Whatever inspection follows a building permit being issued, perhaps that should have taken place before we were accepting a second COA application.
It appears that, from the earlier process until now, that what we heard at first, that there were some mistakes made in regards to communication and what was approved and what was not approved. And now, in terms of issuing a permit for Mr. Boyd to move forward.
Are you talking about the original mistake from the appeal that was a typo?
The original application is only relevant at this point insofar as it was a final decision was made on the merits of that application when it was dismissed at the trial court level. Any sort of issues that were involved with the procedures or anything that might have gone wrong with it, none of that has anything to do with the present application. Its only relevance is that the issues have already been dealt with by that final.
I realize that, but I'm fully aware of that. Okay, thank you.
We're down 11 minutes. I want to do 2 minutes per council members, and we got time to come back around. Oliver?
Okay, Mr. Boyd,
Yes, sir.
they said that you agreed that you have the same proposal.
It's not the same proposal.
Could you please, was that what did you agree to?
I agree.
And what's different?
The difference is what was submitted to them was for a whole roof. We also gave them an estimate, I think it was between $8,000 to $10,000 to complete the whole building in order to satisfy them. And that's the verbal transcript, which is available as well, if it needs to be heard. So the last appeal, which was in June, we only asked to roof half the building, and that was what was requested. Both applications are not the same. What has been submitted on some levels appears to be submitted. What was submitted the first time appears to be submitted the second time, but that's not from our side.
It appears to be submitted the same because of the fact that you really trying to do the same thing, but you just don't. So you're saying that what was submitted different was the roof?
The roof, what was submitted was different. We submitted a blueprint for both sides.
Okay.
And we asked that to roof both sides and to enclose both sides. That was the original application. The second application was just for the one side. Okay.
So basically, from your standpoint, that is the reason why you went ahead and see that this case is here tonight.
That's
because
correct.
There's a distinct difference between what has been submitted. Could you elaborate on that and come home with that one more time?
Sure, not a problem. After meeting with the building department, they suggested in order to satisfy HPC that we roof the entire structure. So we modified our application. At the hearing, we requested to roof the entire building. We did the calculation of what it would cost to roof the entire building, and that's what we presented to them at the hearing verbally.
I'm clear, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Not a problem.
Dr. Varner?
Okay. Was this building historically designated when Mr. Boyd purchased it?
Yes, it's a date. Yeah, this building it was formerly a fire station. It's
Right.
fire station number 4.
I remember when it came to council for the abatement, so
Yeah.
I recall that. Okay, is the legal obligation of the Historic Preservation Commission to maintain the architectural integrity of buildings under its authority or control, or?
Yes, it is, based on the merit of the designated landmark description, which included a flat slope roof.
Okay. And in the discussions we've been having back and forth, when people sometimes talk past each other, would it be fair to say that Mr. Boyd's understanding that a complete roof would meet the requirements as opposed to a flat roof, which you say are the requirements? I've heard complete roof a number of times suggested by the building department.
Yeah.
It was going to meet the requirement. He provided you with a complete roof.
He's saying
plan.
complete roof, but he's talking about a
Right,
complete roof
okay.
that goes up
So
like
complete
this.
in his idea is different from complete in your, but you're
Yeah,
looking
in
at it
its
from different
form,
perspectives.
yeah, the way it's designed and
Okay.
constructed.
So that there's, I mean, that being the case, you're required to, by law, as historic preservation for a building, not issue a certificate of appropriateness. That's your legal obligation because it is not appropriate
If it's deemed
by
appropriate,
definition.
right. So if a complete roof in this shape is inappropriate, then a half a roof in that shape is probably
And does
even
the
more so
building,
inappropriate.
does the city county building commission or have the right to overrule you and issue a permit that supersedes your authority?
No.
I asked Mr. Palmer probably, is that?
Building permit was issued.
I know that.
Full.
Right.
But no, HPC has the authority
Because
over
they
a
are-
historical landmark.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to try and clear up. Thank you.
Ms. Rogan.
Yes, just very quickly, this petition, 0602A, really, boiling it down to 3 asks, okay? Simplifying it. It's a west to east roof that ends on the center wall, correct? And extends over the center mark of the building, correct? So it's just half of the building is to be re-roofed, correct? Or that's what was petitioned. Mr. Boyd, correct?
I'm sorry.
West to east, a roof that extends from going west to east, rests on the center wall, and extends over that center mark, correct? That's one of your asks in the petition that you wrote and that you submitted, correct?
It rests on the center ivy.
Right, okay, so everybody's in agreement, okay? Then there's a second roof in this petition, what was submitted in print and writing, and then regurgitated out in a formal document for a staff plan, which also include item number 2, an additional mono roof, which would have been on the back side of the property, correct? Am I reading this correctly? The 3 elements?
The original application or the second application?
I'm only dealing with the second application, sir, that's in front of me, because that's what I'm tasked to do.
Okay, understand.
The old stuff is old. And then the third component is an open courtyard.
Yes.
All right? Thank you. That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Boyd, I certainly appreciate the economic hardship and the efforts you've been trying to make, and the fact that you're working to rehab a building, an area of town that needs it. What we're tasked to do, though, simply is answer this question. So, in your opinion, sir, what about the HPC's actions are specifically arbitrary, capricious, or an abuse of their discretion? I've certainly heard about building permits and whether things got mailed on time and all of that, but what is an abuse of their discretion relative to what they're tasked to do?
The HPC has the option of looking at the totality of the situation, and they actually have the option of approving a structure that may not be architecturally correct under their own ordinance by the state, under the hardship clause. For some reason, they don't see this as a hardship. You see it as a hardship. We just talked about it. We conversed about it. They don't see this as a hardship. In the denial of the COA, the state requests that they view and weigh in what that hardship causes on the owner. They don't see it as a hardship. Therefore, they only go with what they know, which is we can only approve this, we only approve that. We don't do hardships.
So as you stated, they have the option.
They do have the option.
But in choosing a different option, it's not necessarily arbitrary, capricious, or an abuse in simply choosing another option, perhaps.
I guess my understanding is behind the scenes, my interaction with Community Investment was that they were willing to pay for a portion of a flat roof. However, they were instructed by HPC not to fund the project. So I'm really confused as to, is it the roof we're fighting over, or is there a deeper issue? Especially if someone's willing to help pay for the cost of the city.
Thanks, Regina.
Regina, please.
I have 3 things that I have questions about, and I guess I'll start with that because that's what you just talked about. I'm glad you mentioned that because that was something that I heard. So I have a question, I think, for HPC. What efforts, this was an overall question. I know when we met last time, we had talked about trying to resolve this. There have been recommendations by commissioners to work with the city to identify different things. What is this issue of your communications or any communications you may have had with DCI about whether to support or not support?
I have had several conversations or email exchanges with Jacob Alexander of DCI. Never once have I ever assumed that I would have any persuasion over whether or not they fund or don't fund this project. My conversations have strictly been on the merits of the historic preservation's meetings and explanations of their decisions, and that's it. I have no idea. Actually, Mr. Boyd said that in a code hearing on Thursday, and it's very untrue.
I am not aware of any attempts on HPC's part to dissuade PCI.
Is there, okay, I have some questions in terms of, and I don't know if they can come and speak, because that to me is an issue with regard to the point of abuse of discretion. I'd want to hear from Jacob Alexander. I'd like to see those. I mean, to me, without seeing that, knowing that there have been, I mean, I have a lot of questions about that. Also, the notice is the issue for me because it being postmarked on June 14th, which was a Wednesday, and the hearing being that Monday, we've got a weekend that takes 2 days. So nowhere in my life have I seen important documents like that get to someone within 2 days. So in my
That's the same schedule as what the common council has, where the deadline is on.
I have a problem with that too. That's outside the scope of this particular hearing. So I have some concerns about that because what exactly do you mail to people? Did you mail to him? He didn't open the packet. What was in the packet?
We mail an agenda and the staff report that pertains to his particular project.
What would be included in that report?
What you have in your
Oh,
packet.
this
Yeah.
information. So
Yeah.
basically facts, why you believe what you believe, like what's going to be, all those kind of things. Like your position essentially.
Yeah, it would include the application item, the detailed description of the property, the ordinance number, perhaps of the landmark, and the staff recommendation, the standards and guidelines that we make the staff recommendation based upon, and the recommendation.
Okay. So I would have concerns about that regarding procedures and whether your procedures, even if that's a normal procedure, if that's adequate. I would also have a question about, everyone's saying that this mistake that the building department made was not relevant, but I see it referred to in the documents that I was given, actually referred to by you. So I feel like that's been brought to the conversation. So I too have concerns about that. It's been talked about and I don't have a lot of time. But on page 3 of the statement you gave us, it lists that HPC, or that, well, wherever that was, that basically the building department mistakenly issued that initial building permit that caused him to begin construction. So I think that there's some burden on the city to be, even though that wasn't your department, that we are all representing the city, and that, so I think that there's some procedure there that I have a lot of concerns about.
Just a quick point of order. Just a point of order. Can I have a motion to extend the time by 10 minutes for council portion only?
So move.
Second.
Possible.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I believe
I have one more
the
question.
second district rep has a right to get her questions out.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Now, with regards to this historic preservation plan, I know that, as I understand it, that the HPC is not required to give a plan. If an applicant asks for a plan, under what circumstances would you not provide a plan?
Well, we start with the basic framework of the Group B standards, and those are standard for all of the designated landmarks in the city and the county. So you can start with that as a basic framework. If we were specifically asked to give a plan, we would probably assess if we have the staff time available to us to do so, and we would more than likely do it because we fulfill quite a lot of research requests and letters requesting support from our agency, and I mean, I for one would be thrilled to be able to participate with the owner of a historic property to develop a preservation plan.
So I'm hearing that the applicant says that he was not provided with a plan. So why didn't you provide him with a plan?
I mean, I'm not allowed to enter the building without permission. I wasn't specifically requested to develop a plan.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes, ma'am.
did you request
I have
to
requested
develop a
it
plan?
multiple times, and I even requested it at the last appeal hearing from HBC.
Was that in writing anywhere, or how was that done?
Verbally. I even called and I think they said they need to schedule time to come in, which I don't understand an exterior historic preservation plan for the outside of the building if they need to come in.
Oh, so that's when you got requests to enter the building?
Yeah,
Okay.
they said they'd have to come into the building, which I don't.
So basically, why do you, in your thought, like, why wasn't the plan developed? I mean, because you asked, they said they wanted interior access, and that's why it didn't happen, or?
That's kind of where it stopped.
In your assessment?
They wanted to gain entry into the building. This was during their conversations with the building department issuing citations and violations. It didn't seem like a smart idea to let people that's harming you harm you more if they're going to come inside your building. But an exterior preservation plan, they're more than welcome. They've been more than welcome for the last 5 years to do one.
So,
Ms. Preston.
I don't know.
I would like to move.
Okay.
Because he needs to hear his comments. You have questions?
I have a question.
Thank you.
How often have you guys met one-on-one over this issue?
Prior to the roof being constructed without HPC's approval, we were meeting regularly. I would say Eric popped into the office
After the roof?
without appointment, probably every other month. I mean,
Okay, after the roof?
and after the roof, he stopped in to request public records or to apply for COAs, but very rarely.
But you two have not worked together
We
for
did.
a solution?
We did. In fact, after the Historic Preservation Commission's last, there's 0602, which was for an addition, a second-story addition to the back, and 0602A, which you're reviewing now. The addition to the back, the Historic Preservation Commission approved at that very same
Okay.
meeting, and they asked that staff work with the owner to come up with an appropriate plan for the windows. And I called Eric the next day and invited him into the office, which he did, and we worked together. We did the math on the size of windows that he would need. We looked in our supply of salvage windows there at the Historic Preservation Commission,
Okay.
and did some measurements, determined that we had 4 of the 6 or 4 of the 8 that he needed, and that I haven't received any follow-through or follow-up from
Thank
him.
you. Mr. Boyd, how much was the cost of the flat roof that you got?
23,000 was for just the.
23,000? And did you only get one quote?
We got one quote, that's correct.
And why did you not get more than one quote?
We got the one quote, we pretty much.
Sticker shock?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. I'm going to turn it back to Vice President Davis. I know you have a couple more questions.
In terms of the issue of it needing to have an exterior for a plan to be made, I have a question when it said the majority of the decisions you make that you're interested in are exterior issues. So since the majority of the issues, I even know with the church that I have my membership at, the exterior is more the issue, not the interior. So if the exterior is more the issue, not the interior, then why would you need to have the interior in order to make the plan? Or from that standpoint, because it was shared that there was no conversation about a plan, but then there had to be a conversation about a plan because of the fact that y'all have talked about it and one of the, so there was an agreement with that. It was shared that there was no building proposal, but there was a building proposal. So could you please help me to explain the exterior one? The other one, I only have one question for that one, but please explain that because the attorney said that there was no one and then that one was different, but could you help me out with that one?
I personally have not offered to or asked to go into the interior of the building. And I also haven't had an official conversation or request from Mr. Boyd to present a preservation plan. The word preservation plan has been brought before you numerous times. He's mentioned it in appeals, but I have never been officially asked to put together a preservation plan. And I have also never asked to go into this building to do so.
Can you respond to that just quick and then keep going? That's all I can do.
We've asked for many and many times we've asked for historical preservation plans for our building. Specifically, dealing with HPC's commissioners, there's 9 people and each person has a different opinion of the guidelines. So it would be so much easier to have an understanding of the guidelines to our building if they want a double hung window, a 1 hung window, 2 pane, 3 pane, just specifically for our building. Because the last time I think we went through a hearing, we argued for 20 minutes over a window sash. So if we know the exact type of window sash that you want, because if I fill out an application this month and next month I meet with you, and then one person says another thing, another person says another thing, well, I have to get all 9 people to agree, or at least the majority. So if they can agree before I come in the room, it's a whole lot easier. And multiple times we've asked, the last time I came up here, we asked for a preservation plan. And it was discovered that they've never done a preservation plan in 47 years for anybody in this county.
Mr. President.
We're asking them just to do it.
I'm a piece.
Mr. Boyd, I have one quick question. If this is denied at this point, what do you do with the roof? What do you do with the building?
Code enforcement has given us 60 days to finish this project. We've been robbed at 365 days by HPC stopping the
But
permit.
you continue no matter how this comes out?
If we can move forward with the permit, that'd be great.
Mr. Furlick, you have a question? You good? Everybody else?
Follow up on that.
45 seconds.
Would there be any hardship? Describe any hardship if it is not approved.
If it's not approved, it seems that HPC has an understanding with the building department in violations. Code enforcement, after I met with them last week, they're asking for 60 days to finish a project that usually the St. Joe County gives 2 years to do. Permit in St. Joseph County is a 2-year permit. So they're asking me to do something in 60 days that's usually done in 2 years. I don't think that's fair, especially when the city robbed us of the permit that they gave us. That's a hardship.
Okay, thank you. At this time, thank you both for your presentations. Thank you, Mr. Boyd, for your rebuttal. This is now back to council portion. In the past, we've had discussion. I don't know what you guys did the last time, but we're going straight to...
Straight to vote. We've had a discussion.
Need a motion?
Motion to deny, how would I put it? Motion to override the, motion to approve the appeal?
Overruling of the decision of HPC.
So motion to overrule the decision of HPC.
Second.
Any discussion? You good? All right. Ms. Fowler, we're going to do roll call.
Motion to override the appeal. Vice President Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Furlick.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Preston.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Broughton.
Procedurally, I have a question.
Okay.
If we are saying A or nay on this, shouldn't we not be giving our reasons?
That should have been done in the comment section. Everybody decided not to.
It wasn't a motion, it was, came back and to discussion and they went straight to a motion.
Well, what do you got this motion there? You looked around and asked everybody if they have any more
In terms
comments.
of our decision,
Don't need to.
You don't, no.
Is she entitled to make a comment now? Or
Yeah, we'll allow it.
on that, no, I just want to make sure we're doing this legally. My vote is nay.
Councilmember Varner.
Nay.
President Scott.
Aye.
6-2.
So where does this go now? Can I ask a question?
Okay. What was the count of the vote first?
6-2.
All right.
6-2.
For the appeal to be...
To overturn the appeal
HPC
and
has
2
been
nays.
overturned.
Mr. Varner?
I guess I would direct this first to our council attorney. Where then does this head
As
Because
stated,
there's no requirement to issue a certificate of appropriateness as part of our action. We're simply overturning the denial of the.
I can answer that.
Okay.
This is now documented. It is sent to both HPC, Mr. Boyd. Mr. Boyd still has to follow the rules of the building department and code enforcement on everything going forward. Is basically considered a variance to historic preservation on this application only. But I remember at the time when you came before us that Ms. White and I both mentioned that you are buying a historic building. So any other changes to the exterior of this building has to go back through HPC. The only thing that you're getting dispensation on is the roof at this time. And I wish you the best of luck, and I wish that this works in cooperation with HPC on everything moving forward.
Going back to your question, Dr. Varner, this means that the HPC does have to issue the certificate of appropriateness for this last project. But that's it.
Which is the roof.
Right.
Correct.
Anything else?
Anything else?
It's got to reapply.
Is there any? Well, okay. I have some questions.
And is there a time frame that's in effect in terms of these improvements?
60 days.
Well, that's between him and code right now.
Well, code and HPC.
And building.
I would hope, and I'll just say for the record, that they would have an understanding that to put, if it's a 2-year certificate, to put a 60-day requirement on something that most people in good conscience can do over a 2-year period is something that I think that everybody needs to think about, the consideration of being fair. To sit up here and give a 60-day requirement is trying to make bricks out of straw kind of concept. And I really would hope that our building department, and I would like for my notes to share that I hope that they would be cognizant of fairness when it comes down to that, because we don't need any other issues regarding that matter, especially given the history of our building department and their inadequacies this past year.
Okay, thank you. With that, we are moving on. Is there any new business before this council this time from council members?
Yes, one business, just a note. Is it a note or announcement?
Announcement? You can do that.
I was just glad that Councilwoman Preston, Williams Preston, and I were able to join with the opening, and with the mayor, the opening of Western Avenue, the new extension for that. I'm looking forward to that being extended out to Falcon Street, and to follow along the recommendation that was passed several years ago. So now we are up to Dundee, and so now we would like to continue to go west, young woman, and go west, young man, to continue to move forward to fix up that whole area. So I'm grateful.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Now we'll move to privilege of the floor. I know a lot of you are here for that. Privilege of the floor. Individuals who wish to address the council must first state their name and residential address. Individuals will be limited to 3 minutes only. The maximum time limit for this portion of the meeting is 30 minutes. Individuals may address any issue over which the city has jurisdiction. Individuals shall not be permitted to address any topics which the council has heard in previous agendas. The council president may assign a topic raised by an individual during the privilege of the floor to the appropriate council member, and or request city clerk to contact a member of the city administration for review and comment. All topics that are assigned shall be responded to on the next generally scheduled common council meeting or where is appropriate. For those who are new to this, we have a veteran who's been gone for the last 2 meetings. Welcome back, Jesse. Would you please, for the council and the clerk, so we have record, there is a sign-up sheet. Jesse, where is it? It's going around. Great. Would you please sign into the sign-up sheet? Now, as I stated, this is a 30-minute process. If you are in agreement with what is being said, we would like you to raise your hand. and we will note that. It is all being video recorded so we can go back on the record. We want you to not repeat what is being said, to give pertinent information within that 30 minutes. With that, Mr. Varner will time you, and we'll give you a 30-second warning that your time is about to expire. Are we all clear? Jesse, show them how it's done.
Before we get started, if there are more people here than just him that want to speak, can we get some extended time so that the folks that have been here get an opportunity to speak? I think that's only fair. You extended your time, as a matter of fact, during the last hearing.
And we do have that privilege to extend that time.
Thank you. I'd like to consider that.
We will, and it'd have to be recommended by council on a motion. We can do it now, we can do it when the time comes up close to 30 minutes. So I think we'll look at it at 30 minutes.
I recommend that we do it at the time.
What's that?
I recommend we do it, we'll see where everything goes first.
30 minutes is quite a bit of time, so, okay. All right, please, like I said, Mr. Davis made a good point. Please do not be repetitive. Like I said, raise your hand if you're in agreement or you were going to say what that person was going to say. It will be noted.
Go for it.
I got 30 minutes, you got 3 minutes, please.
You got 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Have at it, Jesse.
Ready?
Go for it.
All right, Mr. Davis.
Jesse Davis, P.O. Box 10205, South Bend, Indiana. First, I want to say that we are very appreciative of what is being done for the homeless. I have obviously brought up some displeasure on some of the funds that are being spent because we spent $3 million to build a brand new building when there was a building available in the River Park area for $500,000 that already had 30 rooms. It's been renovated. Almost could have been a turnkey situation instead of building the Fuse Center. I took that same location back to the mayor because now they're talking about a gateway center for temporary housing, where they can go to talk to people about services. So again, this building's still sitting there vacant. There's 30 rooms in there. There's office space available. We can purchase that building for $500,000, maybe less. It would be more than adequate instead of spending 1.5 or 1.6 million. Again, it would leave us $1 million left to play with. We are appreciative of what's going on. The mayor put together his group, a lot of the advocates, if that's what we want to call ourselves. We're not involved in that group. And when I took a look at their final findings and their documentation, there's a lot of good ideas in there, but there really wasn't any mention of anything to do with mental health. And I can tell you firsthand, over the last 2 months, how difficult it is in our community to get mental health help for someone that needs it. That's something that should have been a priority. If you go down under the bridge, which is where everybody talks about, and you meet and you talk to most of these people, a lot of the folks down there do have some mental challenges. They're not getting the proper help they need. So by opening this Gateway Center, it's a great idea. But if we're only opening it up and we're still only going to have the same service providers who right now can't handle the workload and it's inadequate, it's not going to solve the problem. The other problem you have, we're talking about purchasing 50 homes for some scattered housing. Not sure how that's going to work, but I can tell you this. I tried to house numerous homeless people myself. We don't have very many landlords where you can just call
30 seconds.
Gavin Furlick and say, hey, I want to rent a house. Everything's by management company. And in order to get past the application process, you have to have a credit history, you have to have past rental history. They can't even get past the initial application time. So there are a lot of huge problems that still need to be looked at in order for this homeless situation to be fixed.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, and please line up so we can keep the ball rolling and maximize your time.
You got it.
You were absent.
My name is John Schaefer. I'm an advocate for the homeless. My address is 2206 Miami Street, South Bend, Indiana. and I operate Michiana 5 for the homeless. I wish to state that I am totally in favor of the homeless not living outside in the woods or under a bridge if there is sufficient number of shelters or warming stations where they can go after December 1st. The problem currently now is that there isn't sufficient places for everyone. I ask that there be communication between the city and the homeless and that their voice be heard. I want to see that all rights of the homeless be respected, including personal property, and that they be shown respect in all matters. Tonight, the mayor spoke of approximately 150 homeless, but with weather amnesty, there's only provision for 55 homeless. Even with the Project Fuse coming on board, with its additional 32 beds, that equals 87 spots for future years and for the future weather amnesty in the winter, when there's immediately over 150 homeless. This simply is not good enough. Lastly, Thomas Redmond, a noted homeless solutions expert, came to South Bend back in February and in March to advise the city of solutions for ending homelessness in this community and made his recommendations. But those recommendations were ignored, and he is trying to meet currently with our mayor, and I would like to know why his recommendations were ignored and why the mayor will not meet with him. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, name and address, please.
All right, my name is Charles Smith. I live at 2001 South Warren Street. I'm here this evening to stand up for those who are in the same shoes in which I was and growing up, in which my father did not use alcohol or drugs. Being homeless is one of the worst hardships one can face. People actually die from conditions due to this hardship. I have faced this hardship throughout the country. Two of the main cities in this country we ended up in was Los Angeles and Salt Lake City, Utah. Even right here in South Bend. I work and still am that close to being homeless. I have kids. The homeless is not a start to a new problem, nor is it a new issue. It is an end result to many problems, problems in which our city is truly not addressing physically, for example, drugs and mental physical disabilities. These should be the true focus and not how to sneak around constitutional rights. Pushing the homelessness out from a location where they rely on protection from elements in which the city does not have a solution for physically in place. There is no city, state, or federal laws that prevent them from being at this location that I can find. Due to the fact they are not blocking the path, it does not fall under loitering under the state law. Neither did the skids. Under the South Bend ordinance that was posted, it does not define personal property due to when it comes to property, people are protected and due process must be followed. The mayor ordered these skids to be removed against the constitutional rights of due process in which we were fought for, and these were property. Reminder, a local governing body does not trump the state laws and especially our federal laws and rights. So don't take away what those use to protect themselves from certain elements in which the city does not provide for all at this time. Take LA for example, they learned the hard way. There are two statements that we will hold mayor to which will show honesty by actions made. No one should have to stay under a bridge, and South Bend is a place for all. I ask today from our council, citizens, and our mayor to protect those that are vulnerable to create a Bill of Rights, such as Indianapolis, our capital, did. From discriminatory actions regarding being homeless. This is a community problem, and it is time for all to come together, as it is our responsibility to help our fellow Americans, especially those facing hardships. Also, I continue to hear health and safety. There is truly really no access to a bathroom 24/7, which is obviously why they're using it outside, and that was taken from. Please, until a physical solution is in place, please bring some kind of temporary bathroom escort as asked to do. These are the men that actually go down there, not the mayor.
10 seconds.
Okay.
10 seconds, sorry.
On my phone regarding a property that truly is a safety and hazardous to my neighborhood, as well as several violations under the Chapter 5 ordinances regarding a dog that will not make it through the attempts in its skin and bones. It seems the focus is not our neighborhood,
Sir, your time is up.
safety and hazards. So it's easy to take a skid and not clean up property or save a dog.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, name and address. I'm glad you're raising your hand. Thank you. Name and address.
Henry Davis Jr. Address is 5117 Ottawa Drive. Good evening.
Good evening.
I am coming before you because I'm meeting these folks here, and I'm actually in my official capacity as the chairman of Doodles Chapel Charities. We have over a 50,000 square foot building. We applied for a grant with the housing authority here in South Bend. We was denied that grant dollars to continue on with what we do. But however, we're still working at it. We have food pantry, clothing ministry. We have a number of things that we do to help aid the homeless and those who are in need. Well, one thing that I want to add to this discussion versus what we already know about folks being homeless is that we have an opportunity now, the council does legislatively, to enact what this young man just said took place in Indianapolis, which is the Bill of Rights for the homeless. They enacted it, I think, back in 2000. I think it's 13 or 15, excuse me. I'm a little rushed right now. No, March 2015. And what I think will be awesome for this council to do is to go into a conversation, discussion. I'm sure many of these people will probably participate in the discussion on how do we craft a bill for the Bill of Rights for the homeless so we can get into another level of this discussion. I think we continue back and forth about how many people are homeless, how bad this looks, what this smells like, health and public safety, etc., could be remedied with new laws and new legislation. I did ask the father to make sure all of you guys had a printout that I put together over the last weekend. Hopefully you'll be able to look at that, look over the Indianapolis law. It's still state law, same state statute, so I'm sure there will be a lot of consistency with what happens in Indianapolis here in South Bend. And I commend you on your efforts in advance, and I hope that we could, as a legislative arm, as you are a legislative arm for the city, to help put in new laws to help support the homeless, and so that we can get to another level of this discussion so we don't have to continue to go back over this time and time again. Thank you for your time, and God bless you.
Thank you. Next, name and address.
Hi, my name is Cody Williams. My address is 20880 Raycroft Drive. I come before you with a petition with some 400 plus signatures. Maybe some of you have received an email. If you guys haven't, I'm going to make sure that every member has received it in their email. It's mostly about the disrespectful treatment of the homeless citizens of South Bend. A particular concern of mine that I find quite disconcerting is the signs that I've been seeing downtown saying don't give the homeless change or food. And in a conversation I had earlier today, we had likened it to the akin of do not feed the animal signs, with the homeless being the animals. And I found that quite disturbing and disconcerting, and I hope that you all end up with this in your email box. You can take a look at this and understand that there are a lot of people who are concerned about the treatment of homeless in South Bend, Indiana. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Next, name and address.
My name is Jason Heiriger. I reside at 808 East Bowman Street here in South Bend. When I first came to South Bend was back in 2008, and I was homeless. And we didn't have all these signs going around saying don't give panhandlers. We didn't have the city coming through with their code enforcement, throwing out people's personal belongings. It was more of the city was trying to work with the homeless to solve the issue. It seems now that the city's more concerned with their image more than trying to solve the issue, because they have these companies coming in, so they want a good image, but they don't have a homeless problem. And with these signs saying don't give to the panhandlers, there's been several cases throughout the nation where cities have had the same sign. McClellan versus City of Lisle and Norton, both cities had bans against panhandling, and it was taken to court, and the courts upheld that it's unconstitutional. Panhandling is a form of free speech. Specifically in Schaumburg versus Citizens for a Better Environment, the court said, "We see little difference between those who solicit for organized charities and those who solicit for themselves in regard to the message conveyed. The distinction is not a significant one for the First Amendment purposes. As such, they upheld that panhandling was considered a protected speech. With so many cases and the Supreme Court even upholding it, it boggles my mind that a city like South Bend would just do it just because they can. I've known some of the people that reside on the bridge for years. I've known some of the staff at Broadway Church for going on 6-7 years. And it's painful to see how the city treats them. When, in their excuse of safety and sanitary conditions, when over on Michigan Street Bridge, code enforcement never goes underneath there, but there's trash and litter all over that bridge. But the city never does anything about that bridge. They only target the one that the homeless are under. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, name and address.
Yes, my name is Otis Jones. I stay at 1412 Broadway, College Street. I was at the church, I'm asking you to stay there. I got a wife in headed jail. We can't go to the hospital to use the bathroom. We got to keep running to the church to use the bathroom or go when they can't. We go to the hospital and ask to use the bathroom. Also tell them we can't use the bathroom because we homeless. And he gonna write us up and take us to jail because of that. And all we want to use the bathroom, we ain't cause no problem, nothing. I feel that's unrespectful. A handicapped in a wheelchair can't use the bathroom. I feel that's wrong. I'm asking for help. Please, let us use the bathroom. I'm not causing, I want to use the bathroom, take use the bathroom, and leave. That's all I want. That's it. But they don't want us to use it. Also told me the other day, 2 months license plates and everything. I don't want you to come back here no more. I'm gonna take you to jail. I bet somebody need to go in and talk to them and get that self right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, name and address.
My name is David Vanderveen. I'm the Executive Director at Hope Ministries, 432 South Lafayette Boulevard. I consider myself an advocate for the homeless. I do that work every day. I think we all know we have a real problem, and there aren't easy solutions to a lot of the problems we have in the short term. What we do know is in the long term, the solution is to house people permanently in supportive services. It's what we call permanent supportive housing. I was in all those discussions with Tom Redmond. That's what Tom Redmond has been telling us all along. And that is what the mayor's plan is focused on. We're not going to get there tomorrow, and so we are going to have some challenges in the short term. I'm not going to solve all those challenges for you. What I'm here to say is I think the mayor's plan does address the right issues and is moving us in the right direction. Between the Fuse project, the Gateway Center, and some other money that you have approved in the budget for permanent supportive housing, by this time next year, we should have about 75 people housed that aren't housed right now, and I think that's a good thing. That gets us at least halfway there. And so we've got more work to do. There's more funding that's needed. But I don't want us to lose sight of the long-term solution. I certainly understand the need to address some of these short-term issues as well. But I don't want us to lose sight of what the ultimate solution is, which is the permanent supportive housing. And we need, as a community, to come together and figure out how to complete that process. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Rolanda Hughes. I live at 1029 Riverside Drive in South Bend. I'm a volunteer advocacy coordinator at Broadway Christian Parish. I work with homeless and semi-homeless people several mornings a week. I too want to thank the council for the recent appropriations that will make a big difference toward solving the challenges of homelessness in our community. The Gateway Center will be a terrific asset. The Fuse project already has some people in it, so we're making great progress. I think while the mayor's vision is a good one, some of the recent execution has had a real problem. You've read and you've heard tonight about the concern about people's pallets being destroyed. I talked with Randy Wilkerson, the director of code enforcement, who said that the reason the pallets were destroyed was for public safety because there wasn't clearance in the event of an emergency. I've been down there. Many people here live down there or have been down there and know that that basically is a red herring. There's plenty of room. Even if all the pallets were still there, there's a very wide berth. So I think that the city has been, despite a grand vision, treating people inhumanely and unfairly, treating people without dignity. And this isn't your fault, but you are our voices to say something to the administration that this hasn't been handled appropriately at all. And what it does is erode public trust. People think poorly of homeless people when they read in the paper that they're only down there because they're ignoring the housing that's available to them. You know as well as we know that there isn't enough emergency housing in the city. People are turned away all year long. But the impression that's been given by the mayor and by his representative, Susanna Fritzberg, in their comments, is that there's plenty of housing in the Center for the Homeless and Hope Ministries. Not true. Again, I want to affirm what David said. We're on the right path.
Donna said, look at us.
Got it. Thank you. A couple more things. I think the communication has been really confusing. Randy Wilkerson's notice that was posted under the bridge said all real or personal property must be removed within 48 hours or it will be removed by the city.
30 seconds.
He told me that his intention wasn't to clear people out, but the communications has been confusing, and communications to the press has also been confusing. Also, I think the city needs to be acting proactively, as has been suggested. A couple public toilets need to be down there. This is something that several council members have said months ago. Oliver Davis, Regina Williams-Preston have both talked about the fact that porta potties. Time up?
Yes.
We need to get that done now, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, name and address.
Michael Clark, 1121 Apollo Street. I want to thank you for giving Mr. Boyd an opportunity.
Sir, you can't talk about anything on the agenda.
Okay. You can sit here and give $5-6 million to the homeless. It's not going to be enough money. It's never going to be enough. I've lived in Vegas for a while, and this homeless is nothing like in Vegas. They're laying out in the street. They're half naked. It's unbelievable. They look like they're dead. It could be 120 degrees. They're laying on the sidewalk. They're laying in the street. They're laying everywhere. So, one homeless person is a travesty, but thousands. And what's going to happen is you can put all that money and all these people are going to rush into South Bend and say, wow, this is the place to be. And it's going to happen. I went down there under the bridge. I counted 32 people. And I said to them, can you just clean it up? Maybe they might not throw all y'all stuff out. It's urine. It smells feces. It's terrible. Well, everybody here is going to go home to their nice warm beds and eat that nice meal, because I had a nice meal before I got here. You know, if you're not going to put your money where your mouth is, you know, why you want the government to do it? Now, everybody do pay taxes, and those people under the bridge, they pay taxes too. They consumers, they family, they somebody's mother, brother, they on hard times. But a free ride is a free ride. And if you want to help yourself, it's at the end of your hand. Now, I'm a disabled vet, got problems, whatever. I help anybody that want to help themselves. But if they don't want to help themselves, what can you do? You can only feed a person if they want to be fed. I mean, you can throw $1 million at him, and him, but it's not enough. So when are you going to say, this is not enough? What we're going to do? You cannot give everybody $1 million and think it's going to happen. So you can throw all that money if you like, you know. But 32 people got this together under that bridge.
30
We're
seconds,
here
sir.
to talk about 32 people. And in Vegas, thousands of people. Unbelievable. It gives you nightmares of what it is and what it's going to be. But South Bend going to change. And y'all going to get it together. But you ain't got 33 people to think about. And that ain't bad. Y'all do a damn good job.
Thank you. Next, name and address.
Respected council members, my name is Yatish Joshi. I'm a resident of South Bend, Indiana, and I'm a candidate for US Congress, Indiana 2nd District. And my address is 215 South Hawthorne Drive, South Bend, Indiana 46617. Homeless, veteran lives matter. This tells about our city. These people give a life for our country and they're homeless. Last year on December 2nd, city official ordered city workers to vacate the space near the bus station where the homeless people are living. Due to the city administration not having a long-term plan set in place for homeless people, they began to return just 6 months later in June. We currently have great community advocacy groups working together with homeless to come up with long-term solutions, yet they are feeling left out of administration's plan. I want to thank council members Regina Williams-Preston, Oliver Davis, and Karen White for working together with community leaders to genuinely tackle this dire housing crisis. I believe that together with community involvement, we can come up with creative solution to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, name and address.
I'm Jill Stricatiano, Executive Director at Downtown South Bend, 217 South Michigan Street. So our organization this year has spent more time on this issue than we ever have before. We certainly recognize that many organizations, and certainly the city's working group, has spent more time on this issue now than ever. And we've invested our time, we've invested dollars to put boots on the ground, to be out there connecting with these individuals, to help connect them with resources that are available, in hopes to not only gain data, but also gaps in the system and what is necessary for next steps. We support our organization a unified approach and coordinated leadership on the next steps for this issue. We support supportive permanent housing and also the gateway shelter, which are necessary for us to take the next steps in solving this challenge. We also recognize and support the sense of urgency in helping those that are most vulnerable here in our community. And we, out of our organization, have managed the Ambassador Program. This program is throughout many cities across the country. Many of them have an outreach specialist like we do. They just convened for a meeting in Detroit, and out of the 91 cities represented there, every single one of them had one common challenge: homelessness, panhandling, and the opioid epidemic. We're not the only city. Sometimes we're in our bubble and we think that we are, but it is across this nation. It's huge. It's not going away. And so we need those unified efforts. We need that coordinated leadership to take the next step to make things happen in our community and have that much of an impact.
Thank you. Next.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, you.
Come on up.
And I'm so glad that you're doing something for the homeless.
This way, sir. You need to address the council.
Oh, certainly.
Name and address, please.
It's Alan Klein, and my mailing address is 1412 South Carroll Street, which is a Broadway Parish Church. Okay, so that's all I want to say about homelessness. Basically, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing about homelessness. As the lady mentioned, it is what it is. And I'd like to mention that this city is a beautiful, wonderful city. And at the south end of the St. Joseph, inside 5 years, you will have 20 million visitors a year. Make no mistake. This will be the best university ever. It has nothing to do with Notre Dame, although with competition.
Sir.
Quite a university to compete against. But I think the Common Council should consider just the fact that this actually is the sanctuary city that Trump says we cannot exist, and he will call you and let you know that personally. I'm not joking. Because this has been in the plan ever since Mr. Washington and Benjamin Franklin put it in the plan. Okay, so, but by all means, yeah, I got what, 30 seconds or something?
Minute 38.
Oh, well. I think that the best political position is here, so I'm glad that you did not go anywhere. Because the governor of governors is right here. And we want to govern from the bottom up.
Sir?
And we're going to allow Pete to teach us what that even means. Because of course we did not want to dance the chair. It's a joke now, but nevertheless. And we want the best politician to stay right here. So, I don't really have much else to say. I mean,
okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you, sir. Next name and address.
Hello, my name is Virginia Dickin. I am a new resident to the South Bend, living at 2129 Dorothy Street. And I just wanted to speak. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but in listening to people, I wanted to let you know that I was very excited to move to South Bend this past summer. I convinced my partner to settle here with me. I'm moving over from Elkhart, her moving up from Indianapolis, because I told her that South Bend was a wonderful area, that I thought that it reflected our values, that it was going to be a good place for us to find a home together. And I really do believe that, but I was very challenged when I was showing her around downtown and saw those signs about not giving to panhandlers. I was embarrassed to have told her that this was a place that reflected our values. She and I both know what the research shows. We both know what actually works, and we know that that's not actually an approach that comes from collaboration with people who are homeless, but comes from other motives. And so then when I was later reading news about some of the things that are going on right near where we live, under the bridge, I've just been feeling a lot of, not regrets. I'm still very glad to be living here, and I'm actually extremely proud seeing how many people came out today to really speak about this and seeing how you all are responding. But I want you to know that some of us are actually moving here and attracted to this area because we believe that this type of thing wouldn't happen here. We believe that we wouldn't see signs saying don't give to panhandlers. We wouldn't see people removed from their places under the bridge. It's broken our hearts to drive by and see people living under there when we go home each night, but we know that the solution is not taking away property. We know that the solution has to come from collaboration with and solutions that come from the populations most affected. So as a new resident to South Bend and someone who still does believe that this was the right choice, I'm asking you to remember that that is what brings some of us here, is the values that we assume are espoused by this city.
Thank you. We are at our time. I would entertain that we hear the last two people here.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And go ahead. Do two more and that's it.
Good evening. My name is Clara Ross. I'm also an advocate for the homeless. I work side by side with Mr. John Schaefer with Michiana Five for the Homeless. Our sign here currently says...
Yes. Yeah, address, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. 726 Cushing Street, South Bend. Thank you. The sign says a bed for every homeless person. That's a nice idea. It's a theory. It's a reality. We're not being reactive. We're not being proactive. This is something that should have been resolved years ago. It's nothing but an elephant in the middle of the room that we're just not noticing. One of the things that primarily concerned me is homeless women. I do not agree with the number and statistics that was originally said. There's only 100 and so many homeless people. I do not agree with that. I work personally with the homeless. That number far exceeds that. They're not even including the ones who are called couch surfers, those who currently do not have a home, who are just residing on someone's couch. Those numbers aren't even counted. So how do they come up with that statistic? I don't know. But back to the problem that needs to be dealt with. It's the homeless themselves. Okay, it's something that should have been dealt with a time ago. So what exactly are the formulas that need to be done? It's mental health need to be dealt with. Addiction need to be dealt with. There's things that need to be dealt with that haven't even been assessed yet. Adult Protective Service needs to be involved to do what they need to do to help those who are out there. There's as many problems as many homeless there is problems. As many problems there is situations. And just giving them a bed will not resolve the homeless problem that happens here in St. Joe County. Giving them a bed is not going to do it. It needs to be dealt with on all levels. Because even if you do give them a home, they're coming back to that. They have created a community within themselves, a line of protection, of salvation, in which they resolve it within their own selves. That's not being addressed. The women out here that are homeless is not being addressed. Them being invisible is not being addressed. Them not being seen is not being addressed. And when this committee was originally brought forth, how come no one who's currently homeless on the mayor's committee anyway? How can you talk about resolving something and not involving those who are directly involved? How's that accurate decision on what's going to be done? Or resolve? How do they come to the conclusion with just people in theories? Why don't they ask the people who actually need the help? That's all I want to say. A bed is more than just a bed. We're not talking about a house. We're talking about a home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, name and address, please.
My name is Paula Kelly, and I live at 234 East Irvington Avenue. And I have seen a lot in South Bend, both sides. I have people in family who say, well, they're not going to help themselves. And then I have people who say, you know, some of them can't, and it's a huge problem. And I think there's an understanding problem with homelessness. It's not a person, it's a situation, and these people who are homeless people, I don't think they choose to be homeless. And I think if we don't do something to give them the opportunities or to help them, as she was saying, help the women that are out there with children. I know children that are homeless. We live in South Bend and we have children around here that are homeless. It's terrible. It boggles my mind sometimes. And I agree with you that we should have people who are homeless speaking, you know, in these conversations on what to do for them and how to help them. And we can stand up here. I'm not homeless, so I can't say, well, you need to do this, this, and this. But I can get out there and get involved. And I think our whole town needs to say, you know, I'm going to get involved in this. I'm going to do something about it. And what can I do? There's organizations that are out there working on this, and there's a solution. If we have all this help and these formats to speak about this, there has to be a solution. And I hope that, you know, this council can help us reach some solution and some real progress can be made for these people who are actually freezing to death in the winter. I can't stand it. It's just terrible that they're out there with children freezing under this bridge. It's serious. Serious. And thank you very much for what you're doing.
Thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Oh, one quick thing, Mr. President.
Yes,
if you
sir.
can, I would greatly suggest that we continue this discussion on some level at our upcoming Health and Public Safety Committee. The issue that former Councilman Davis and others have brought to us, and Mr. Schaefer has sent to us regarding the Indianapolis ordinance. I've talked to several people. I'd like to work along with those who would like to work with me to help see how we can make that a South Bend ordinance, and those in the council can submit that, and we can review that with our attorney. And if he can review that ordinance and see what the pros and cons and look at it for South Bend, and then I'll work on sponsoring that. If I can get 3 other sponsors, let's bring that toward the Health and Public Safety, and let's continue to have this discussion and not let these words fall on deaf ears. But let's take some action tonight, and let's regarding the fact that we're going to move forward with reviewing that ordinance from Indianapolis, and then giving you an update of where we are at the next Health and Public Safety meeting, where we are with that. In order to move forward, I would ask the mayor to join us with that, with Susanna Frisberg. Those who are homeless who would like to help us out, those who are not homeless would like to help us out. East side, west side, north side, whatever you live in South Bend, don't live in South Bend. All ideas on the table, because we got to do something. regarding whatever aspect, women or children, panhandling, whatever aspect of panhandling you want to work with, you want to go, I know. But I want to make sure that we do something at our next meeting right after Thanksgiving, and follow up at our last meeting in December, so we can have something to be ready to vote on in January, if not sooner.
Yeah, with the urgency of this and importance, we will take that up. We'll discuss with the chair of Health and Public Safety.
Okay.
Organize that. All public meetings, all committee meetings will have a 48-hour notice of when they go out. I'm sure we will inform the media, and you all know when that meeting is. They'll be open to the public.
But so we can have at least an update that we will have at our next meeting, have that. And if those would like to join me in being a sponsor with that, please email me by this weekend, and we can move forward with that.
All in favor to adjournment?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Well, I'm sorry, calling you doing something, thank you.
Those are yours, they're signed.
You talking about,
I know you're talking about.
it's more, is it more? It's less than
No.
More was the other one. But you know what, I'm not going to, how you do it? That was how those were questioned. And I kind of did I hear that said that he would not comment. See, I think that questioning of the petition is not stated as justification for